right, make sure. Oh. And I figured I'll get us going live real quick. I'm gonna do a last minute notification for a couple of those people out there. That way they can make sure to hop on. Because I told everybody last night for my other channel, because I live streamed on the Political Matrix.
All right.
On Saturday nights, and so I just like for everybody who wants to get in there, give them that last little reminder. So I'm like, I caught you live. Okay, all right, yeah, good. So that now I won't have to say, yep. Well, sorry, we got going a little earlier than you planned. So
no,
and then for my people who are out here on the West Coast, it lets them get that wake up call because I know some of them went out drinking. So.
And the Political Matrix channel, obviously you've got two channels, and then you've got this one, and then you've got the Political Matrix.
Three channels, yes.
And what distinguishes each one from the other?
Well, what distinguishes each of the channels is more so the content. On this channel, what I like to do is its channel is a little bit more loose and flexible. I don't have a regular scheduled time because depending on where my guests are, I try to accommodate for time zones and things like that. The only kind of congruent theme is that I typically go on what would be Sundays in the U.S. Some countries it can end up being Saturday. Some countries it can end up being, Monday. And then I do another show on this particular show. I have my individual shows where I'll do some interviews, like we're doing today, interview/conversation. Then we'll do occasionally we will do some my younger co-host. We have a show on here called Talk of the Ages, where we have conversations just about general things. It might be some pop culture stuff, some sports stuff, a little bit of everything. And then on the Political Matrix, we do deeper dives into politics and kind of how me and my co-host Cy Lawson, how we see things. We touch on a lot of different areas I don't feel many people in the political lens are going after. I mean, it's handfuls. I don't want to start naming people, so I forget, to name somebody out there. But they're there's my boy Cy Lawson himself says, yes, the Political Matrix is where we delve into the issues beyond what the mainstream narratives would have us discuss. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. Beautiful, Chris. Beautiful.
I've seen, man, like I've gone through a couple of your videos on the different channels, and the kind of content that you put out there, it's not the usual stuff. It's not mainstream at all.
Well, that's why me and Chris, we get shadow banned, and that's why we get into some trouble sometimes with some of the stuff we talk about. Yeah, Chris always has my back. He's always ready to ride into any of the discussions which are out there. And sometimes when we are talking typical stuff, we like to look at it from a different perspective than other people are talking about it from. Yeah, we ride in together or we die. Exactly. And the third channel would be Hebrew Apologetics, where I get into my faith side and I talk a little bit of history, archaeology, mixing a bunch of different things, and then breaking down the Bible also. So that's what I do on all of those.
Yeah, I saw, I was watching one of your conversations. I think sometime last week you were discussing some biblical stuff about and all that
about the Black church.
Yeah.
Well, what I've noticed with that whole thing about the Black church is it hasn't been, only an American issue. Mm-hmm. I've noticed it's been throughout the Black diaspora around the, basically, various different parts of the world. And so I found it very interesting because if you go into the Black community, no matter where, it's always had, you know, a deep connection to some kind of spirituality or faith. And so, whether it be parts of Africa, whether it be parts of the UK, whether it be parts of Germany, whether it's parts of the United States, that's one, you know, congruent theme which I've noticed across the board.
Mm. No, that's true, man. Talking about African diaspora, let me write this because I just thought of a question that I'll have to ask you.
Okay. All right. So I'll go on ahead and introduce everybody. Hello, everybody who is in here. I'd like to welcome you all and good morning. My name is Marcus Cage, also known as Young Morpheus, also known sometimes as Marcus Rage or Drunk Uncle Marcus, whatever you guys would like to call me. I know it's all in love, so I take all of the different nicknames that you guys give me. Today, for what I've been thinking with Marcus Cage, we have a very special conversation. And I call it a conversation because I don't like to just have one-sided interviews. I like to talk just like I would talk as if I was, you know, meeting up at a coffee shop with one of my friends. And so that's how we have it. It's back and forth. Today, I have a very special guest. This gentleman is out of South Africa. Last time I talked to him, he was traveling back and forth from Cape Town to Johannesburg. I've noticed a bunch of different things about his story that I found very, very fascinating. Having a humble upbringing, you know, helping out with his family quite a bit, and then going into to blockchain and things like that, and understanding, you know, how those things work, working his way up the ladder, you know, not just being given something at the top, then going to university, studying it in various different fields, and just the wealth of knowledge, reading some of his articles and the viewpoint which he goes into, and so many historical ties that I've seen, and information which I would say where I might have had a surface level, you know, knowledge of some of the things, where he is just really brought together a lot of clarity on many, many issues and on things that maybe I might have been like, okay, if I thought about it, I would have knew it, but I would have never went down that pathway. And so he helped open my eyes on a lot of things. I would like to welcome Dr. Gugulethu Hughes. How are we doing today, sir?
I'm great, Marcus. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, I'm just calling it a show for the viewers, but like you, I think, like you've said, we actually gonna be having a coffee shop conversation. So
Got my
yeah.
coffee?
Well, I don't drink coffee, unfortunately. So I'm gonna be in the coffee shop having my water here with me. Yeah, I there was a time when I was staying in Cape Town full time, so I was working on a couple of projects. So I was having like maybe 10 cups of coffee a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a lot. So at some stage, man, like just even the smell of coffee, even if I take one sip, like I start having heart palpitations and stuff. Then I was like, you know what, I'm done with coffee. So yeah, I just take herbal tea if I need anything like that. So luckily today we're at this coffee shop that offers herbal tea.
Well,
Hopefully
that's good.
everyone's going to enjoy.
I know I'm trying to get myself to be healthier, but that's easier said than done, right? I mean, we can all talk about what we want to do. I mean, I like to lose 25 pounds too right away, but I mean, I don't see that happening very
Yeah,
soon.
don't get me started on the global food supply chain, because yeah.
Yeah. There's so many topics that I would like to get you started on. And I guess I'll put out this for those coming in. If you guys have any questions, glad to see you in there, Mona. Glad to see you, Yipper, and for the handful of people who I see who are on who haven't decided to hop in the comment. Don't worry, we are friendly. I like to have an engaging conversation and get the chat involved. I'm not like some other channels where they'll just kind of have what they plan to talk about, and then kind of it's so busy that they don't have the time to be able to kind of incorporate everybody. I like to keep it free flowing, especially if you guys have something where it's really pressing and you want to hear our takes and our perspectives, please let us know. I will kind of, I'll notice you there, and then I'll make sure to bring it up if I can, or when I can. Some of the topics that I know from my end, which I want to ask about from some of the articles, which do you prefer being called, Gugulethu or Hughes or Doctor?
Um, just call me Gugulethu.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Alrighty, cool. Well, some of the topics.
Everyone else just calls me yours, so maybe you can go with
Well,
that.
I think because they take the easy way out and they
They
run
take
it
the
from
easy
the.
way out, so let's make it easy for everyone then.
Well, you guys can call him Hughes. I'll call him Gugulethu because I
Awesome.
want to make sure that I get used to pronouncing it. Like I learned that there's multiple names, of course, for the continent of Africa, but there was one which I remember uh, a couple of different people from various parts of Africa started calling Africa because if I don't know if you guys know it out there in the audience, but Africa is not. For me, it just feels weird calling it Africa because it's kind of gotten that name more so from European colonizers. I've from and please correct me if I'm wrong. I've learned that yes, there was a certain part in kind of the North Africa area which was called Africa. A man by the name of Leo Africanus um, got very famous in that area, and then of course, he adopted the name Africanus, and then eventually, because of things which he did in the northern part of the continent, the whole continent got named basically for his fame. And so, let me know if that's correct or not.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. I mean, there's many more other things that you might have come across that relates to Africa, and when you try to study and read more about it, you always told that this was discovered by Christopher Columbus, or this was discovered by, including mountains. Like we made to believe that Europeans discovered uh, basically everything about us. Um,
Yes.
that's the narrative, and which goes back to what you said about the Africa that we all know today. It's actually a creation of Europeans
Hmm.
for their own obviously selfish needs, which then led to colonization. They needed to give us an identity, which is they made it Africa. So it's not definitely an organic evolution of African people that led to what we have now. And I'm sure we'll get deeper into that, including how the borders, the African borders, how they plotted and to divide,
Hmm.
Africa amongst themselves for their own benefits. And it continues to this day.
Well, yeah, I mean, oh man, so many different directions we could go with all this. I mean, so much that I want to talk to you about. I just want to clarify it first, so I don't keep you too much longer than you have. How much time do you have today? Because if you got the time, I got the conversation.
Um, let's say maximum 3 hours.
Oh,
Maximum,
okay, cool. I
yeah,
can
maximum.
I can hit most of the points I need to in
Yeah,
3 hours. Um,
yeah, because
I,
I obviously I still need to.
you're still human. You got to
I've,
eat.
no, I've got a flight early in the morning, so I need to be driving to the airport. It's around 2-3 a.m. But yeah, no,
Busy man.
3 hours. Yeah, what can we do?
Well, I mean
Yeah.
that's a good thing though. I'll give like I was telling people, if you start thinking of the etymology of where some of these words even come from. For instance, like for a time period, the continent was called Ethiopia. A lot of people don't know that Ethiopia is actually Greek. Ethiopia means burnt face. So anybody who likes to go from that narrative that all of a sudden, they just start having race issues in the 1940s when Hitler was having issues, back to the Whoopi Goldberg statements, oh, that's when racism just popped up. Well, no, there's always been racism going on for as far back as can remember in human history. I mean, you go into the Greeks, that's where a lot of this racism comes from, all the way back to the Greek Empire, then the Greco-Roman Empire, then the Roman Empire. It happened when you started to have more of the European influence actually starting to go into the Mediterranean and African regions, or I'd even say the Far East also. Not even really that much the Far East, just the Levant in general, starting to go into that area where all three of those continents meet. Another one, Niger, it meant black. Well, and that's calling it the nice way, because a lot of people don't know in Greek there is no soft G. And Niger comes from the Greek. It's only a hard G. And so if we add one more G to that, we can all figure out what they were being called.
What it means. Oh, awesome. I was going to get to that and say, okay, now I can connect the dots. That's why.
Yeah. Look at more of the names of places. For instance, like for the hat that I'm wearing, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico means port of riches. That's what they thought of the place. Think about it. How many people know of the parts around Africa, the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Slave Coast? All of these things were named for what they thought of the places and what they extracted from them.
Exactly. We've got the Copper Belt. For South Africa, they just decided to give a direction. Let's say it's the south of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're going to set our headquarters for everything else that we want to do. And there's many other African countries that were named. Obviously, some have been changed later on, like Namibia used to be, I think, Southwest Africa. That's what they called it.
Mm-hmm.
There's many other countries. Zambia used to be called Northern Rhodesia. And the Rhodesia part, it was like taken from Cecil John Rhodes. So you naming it after that.
Man. Well, let me get my tablet out to write that down. Because we got to make sure to come back to John Rhodes. We cannot talk Africa without talking about that man.
Without talking about that name, yeah. I mean, I wish Europe could, Britain could still exhume his remains and take them back to Britain, because they're still here in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
He caused so much suffering, really, and it goes back. So I'll continue to refer a lot to South Africa, because I think South Africa is if you really want to understand the level of colonialism, and then South Africa presents a very good case study for many reasons that we'll get onto as we go on. But for those who didn't know, like we've been talking about how the Europeans were naming different African places and countries and so forth. South Africa is itself a creation of Europeans. They created it in 1910, and they called it the Union of South Africa. Remember, they had different states before then, the British and the Boers and everything. And then they decided that in 1910, we're going to become one. So let's create something that's called the Union of South Africa. And in that creation, in that referendum, not a single Black person participated in that. That was the Europeans mapping the country for themselves. So that's where we at now.
Specifically Dutch, because I always like to break it apart when I talk about the different areas, who was involved in these different areas. And when you start thinking about who was involved, then it helps connect you to the modern day places and how their impact is laid on the continent. Of course, we're going to get into we're gonna talk generally. It's gonna be free flowing, so we're gonna talk generally about a bunch of different things. I do want to talk about that article that you wrote about Africa and its relationship with Russia. I definitely want to talk about the influence out of China. What's going on, and I want to hear some of your thoughts on that. I'm trying to remember what else did I have on my. We're going to talk about roads, of course. I want to know what you think also. Well, oh, Hamza, thank you for adding that. French and Arabs destroyed Africa, because a lot of people don't realize that the Arabs moved into Africa, and then that led into a big part of one of the slaveries that a lot of people don't talk about. We do talk about the transatlantic, but many do not talk about the sub-Saharan slave trade, where a lot of Africans were trafficked out of mainly Central Africa, but out of many parts, and that took many Africans into the East. So some were already settled there. That's a different discussion, but many were taken to various parts, all over East, and that would be like some of the places we think of, Turkey, Iran, let's see, what is it? Pakistan, India, and even as far reaching into China and Japan. And so I I like for people to keep all of those things in, because Africa is literally the heart of the world. That's where everything started. That's where everything generated from. I don't care what your skin tone is. We all originated from there at some point in time. And so that's where all the history, all the major kingdoms started there. I mean, going all the way back to the ancient Sumerians, and then, advancing into, well, Sumerians or Babylonians, however you want to call it, the Egyptians, and we can go on and on and on. But sorry for running my mouth too much.
No, and I think what you just mentioned now, it's actually gonna even lead us to one of the questions that I need to ask you. Obviously, like you've mentioned, that really Africa is the cradle of humankind, if we may put it that way.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, with all this slave trade and the trafficking of African peoples to all over the world, and then you realize that now there's kind of like a disconnect between the current citizens of Africa, as it were, and the other Africans that were trafficked years back. And yeah, I think we definitely gonna dive into that. So we're gonna talk about I'm gonna ask about foundational Black American movement. I've got lots of questions about that, because in there's 100% denial that Africa was the, where the brothers come from. So yeah, I think I would like to get your view on that. Yeah, and
I can definitely talk on that.
Yeah, I think some of the items that I put in here, I'm gonna ask you about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Well, I'll put this out there for everybody. For those who I know we get busy when we're on Twitter and stuff like that, and don't always get all the notifications. But in my thread, there's been a lot of conversation about Black Lives Matter, and so we're going to address some of those questions and concerns. It's been a very beautiful back and forth kind of debate and dialogue. And so we're going to talk about some of those things in there and get into that, because believe it or not, for the American audience, there is a lot of interest in Black Lives Matter and on a lot of so-called Black issues that are going on with various different people around the world. And so we always have to keep that in mind. Some things that are second nature to us that are going on that we think, they're not caring about that. They got this and they got that. There are people who are looking at what goes on in America and have questions also. My brother here, Shadowban, let me pop this up, because this is nothing but facts. The indigenous people of North Africa are not Arabic. The indigenous were conquered, subjugated, and either slowly genocided, yes, and pushed out of many of the areas. For those who don't know, I do come from a biblical lens on a lot of these things also. So I do know, I think back to the biblical identities and who were in certain areas. and Mizraim, which that would be like the Egyptian area. Those people, if you look back through archaeology, do not have the same phenotypes of the people who are there currently. And the reason why is because you had like the Umayyad Caliphate, which ransacked through that area, which pushed a lot of people out of North Africa. So many people who were living in those areas in parts of North Africa and the Nile Valley region were some were pushed to the south, some were pushed more to the center, some were pushed to West Africa, and so that's not often talked about just even the diaspora that went on within Africa itself. So you have people who are mixed up all over Africa, and like it always blows my mind here in America because Americans always look at Africa as this just one homogenous zone where they're all just the same people. And there's no difference when literally, phenotypically and DNA wise, Africa is literally the most diverse continent on the earth. I mean, Europeans actually have far more connection, DNA wise, but yet in their minds, they are completely different. No, I'm French, and no, I'm British, and oh, I'm Scottish. No, DNA wise, you guys are like little minutiae apart. Whereas you can go to Africa and you can have somebody who is Zulu, and you put Zulu next to let me think of um, I'm trying to think of another group real quick.
Yoruba in Nigeria.
Yeah, or yeah, Aruba. Yeah, that's another group that DNA wise there is a big difference. Khoi and the San people, there are big genetic differences, much more of a genetic difference than you find in Europeans, and that's often and well, not only Europeans, even Asiatic people. China, Japan, Thailand, stuff. So that needs to be focused on, and also some of the connection, for instance, like with the Aruba and people in Japan, how there's similarities even between some of these languages in Africa and some of these Asiatic languages. Sorry, I got on a little bit of a rant there.
No, that's. I mean, you hitting the nail on the head there. Africa is a very diverse, very diverse continent. Obviously, we've got lots of languages, different cultures, but in all that diversity, we very much united in our diversity. And what the Europeans have tried to do then is to try create a wedge between African people. So now they come up with terms like ethnicity. So that's why you get to a point where of all the genocides in Africa, all the ethnic cleansing in Africa, it's being perpetuated and sponsored by the West. So that's meant to drive a wedge between different African people. As it stands, like we've got lots of all it takes is to poison people, just poison their minds, and then you sit back and watch them, fight amongst themselves. That's what's happening in Africa now, where we've got lots of tribes or groups that are not getting along well, and it's not out of Africans' own making, but it all stems from mental colonization by the Europeans, that have tried to kind of like destroy that unity that we have as Africans. So in essence, they have disrupted our own evolution as not only as Africans but as Black people, and I think you would concur with me that it's the same thing that you have in the USA, right? Where you now have got two or more different classes of Black people that are just not getting along. I was reading an article the other day. There's this, I think it's a law professor from Stanford. I forget his name. He penned an article, I think 2 months back, where he was advising educated Black women to only consider getting married to white men, right? So, and we're gonna dive deep into that because I really want to pick your brain on what you think is the future of the Black family values or the Black family structure. Where are we right now as Black people in terms of family values? Because family is something that's very big and intricate for us as Black people. Where are we now, and where are we heading to? Because there's definitely a deliberate ploy to destroy the Black family structure. We see it. It comes in many forms. It comes in many forms. It comes in feminism. No offense to those of us or our sisters that are pushing the feminism agenda from a place of or position of seeking empowerment. But obviously, it's important that we then dig deep into how this feminism movement was started by the CIA. I think that information is out there in the public, and what was the main purpose of it? Because it's one thing to have feminism, which is a good thing if you're going to talk about empowerment. But now it's the interpretation that's being pushed in. How are the people interpreting feminism? Especially in most cases, it's the women that are interpreting it in their own ways, and they tend to ignore how and why it was formed. So I think I'm gonna pick your brains on the Black family structure. I'm gonna pick your brains also on the USA. It's called the school to prison pipeline. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of great topics. Jim asked, and we'll get into that because that's I'm pretty sure that is a not a short answer. Jim asked, what do you think about Bill Gates? So remind me to bring that one up because I know it's not a short answer. Hamza says all religions were forced on Africans. Actually, this is what I would say. I would say Africa had many different faiths and religions, so-called religions. But what happened is the Europeans took a lot of those religions, customs, traditions, and perverted them. I'll just say it bluntly, perverted them, and then pushed them back on us in their own versions. And so that's where I would say where the difference would be. Because there's history of religion going back far before Europeans ever really took any major prominence or power. I mean, well, Hamza brings up Islam and Christianity were forced on them. Yes, Islam does come from Europeans more so than more people realize, but in Christianity. But what I mean by how it was perverted is the council where the Bible was canonized was the Council of Carthage, which was in Africa. So it was Black people who were forming and putting together the Bible, and then it all got, the Europeans constantly took mixtures from other versions of different religions to push them together to add in their own beliefs. And even a lot of the European religion is mixtures and misnomers and renomers of African religions. It's taking things from Kemet or Egypt, things that came out of Babylon, and mixing these things and changing these things, and then infusing them into the Bible, and then creating Christianity. And Islam is only a branch off of Christianity, which a lot of people don't know. I'm trying to remember what it's called. The Quran. Quran means to recite if you translate that into English. What are they reciting? The Bible. So, I mean, people think that it's so different, but it still just falls up under a more strict and more traditional understanding of more the Abrahamic faiths with its own added in mixtures of other things. So let's see, where should we even start? Yes, Dr. Umar Johnson, he probably would be happy to hear this conversation, which I wouldn't mind having this conversation with him. Said, didn't the Greek zodiac come from Egypt? And that came from Babylon. Yes, zodiac comes from Babylon. So I mean, pretty much anything that you will think of came from the African continent or the Levant. That's where the cradle of civilization comes from that region, and everybody branched out from there. As the population grew, more people went further and further and deeper into Africa. And then as war came, it pushed more and more people further and further away, because a lot of the African nations focused more on building things than trying to build up wars and armies, except for, say, the Egyptians. But many of the African cultures were focused on building, growing crops, lands, family. War wasn't a big part of what the cultures were about. It just happened once the Europeans start gaining more and more power. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there were not empires that were on a power quest. That's always been a part of human nature.
Yes, yeah, I think the way that you're putting it correctly. So from a European perspective, the wars that they drive all over the world, it's basically to destroy. Whereas in Africa, as we're evolving as Africans, like you've said, we had strong empires, right? And what was happening is, if you are a strong empire, what you do is you always trying to grow your empire, right? And you do that through conquest, not to destroy, but more of like to annex or bring more people under your kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was, it wasn't meant to destroy, like what is happening with Africa. It was, I think it was as natural as it can be, as humane as it can be. Yes, obviously you would get where there were fights will break out and so forth, and there's conflicts and all that stuff. But the driving force behind it was never to destroy. The driving force behind it was never to plunder. The driving force behind it was never to, kill or put something into oblivion. So, and you compare with Europe and all these wars that they drive all over the world, and how they treated Africa and how they still treat Africans. Maybe we can start with looking now at the Berlin Conference of 1884. That's where the Europeans decided that they're gonna have a cup of coffee there for a couple of days or weeks, and they're gonna decide amongst themselves how they're going to split Africa and partition it amongst themselves. So you had the Germans, the British, the French, the Belgians, and talking about Belgium, because the Berlin Conference happened in 1884. In 1883, already the United States had already recognized Belgium as the one country responsible for the Congo, that literally owns the Congo. So already the bias was already there. I think we're going to talk a lot about Belgium, because if you're going to talk about how Black people have been treated badly and put into cages as if we're monkeys, then we need to talk about Belgium. And as we know, with the European Union, Belgium is known as the cockpit of Europe. That's where they make all these decisions. It's their headquarters for all these evil deeds that they do all over the world, and all these wars that they create and so forth.
It's kind of interesting that you brought up Belgium and looking at it from that perspective, because a lot of people don't realize, just think about it. Where is one of the major meetings which the UN has? Davos. Davos is right in that region up there. The Bilderberg meeting, granted, that's in a lot of times it would be in Germany originally, and then before they start moving it around places, but it's all right there. Hamza says, so Nordic people, basically. Yes, so we are talking Nordic people. And I was going to make one correction to Yipper. Yipper says, like how the Moors went into Spain, Portugal, southern Italy, and built it up. They didn't only go into Spain, Portugal, and southern Italy. They literally went across the whole continent of Europe. And to back up this proof, if you ever want to look into what is it called? The sigils of the different houses. Every single one of them every nation in Europe, you will find that they have a black sigil showing only people who are ever going to be on the sigil of a nation are the people who are in control of that nation. And so you have to ask yourself, why do they have sigils of black people on every European country? Because at one point in time, they were the royalty there. Another thing is you have to ask yourself also, why were Europeans going through and destroying so much of the religious artifacts? Because people who painted the religious works, especially if you look into Russian iconoclasm, literally everybody is painted melanated. If you look into that, so and you can still go into like the church of the major church in Russia, which Vladimir Putin goes and gets all his benedicts and all that stuff like that. In the front part, you see white images. You go around the corner into the back, and you see all the black images, the black Madonna, all that stuff. Yeah. And it's the same thing if you go to the Vatican. They got black images in there. So this was not just a lot of people think that was only in the Spain, Portugal, kind of the Mediterranean area. No. It was all the way across.
Yes, and I think if one really wants to see the worst of European perversion, then the British Museum is the perfect place to go to. It goes back to what you were mentioning, where the Europeans were going all over the world. They're taking artifacts. You literally taking away people's cultures, what people value, and then you all putting it in there. I mean, like I don't know really what motivated or what motivates Europeans to be this perverted. It's quite shocking, really, and disgusting. But yeah, these are the kind of people that we deal with.
One word, greed. A certain level of greed that is inherent in some of these people. And because I brought this up on my show last night. I said, a lot of people like to say, oh, well, us humans. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. Who have been in control of pretty much most of the world for the last 2,000 years? Hasn't been everybody hasn't been in power. I mean, one group of people. So if you do good, accept you're good. If you do bad, accept you're bad. Don't try to share the blame, because we're not all sharing the glory.
Exactly. But the Europeans are not really good at taking the blame. As far as they are concerned, they brought us immense civilization. They're very quick to remind us of all the good deeds that they've done and the things that they've done for us, including the phones and the vehicles. And I always say to them, all this technological stuff that you tell us about, do we even bother digging through the supply chain and finding out where you're getting all these raw materials for your Apple phones? Where does it come from? Do you even bother doing a total life cycle cost of these products that you're saying you've made for us? Do you know how much damage you've done to these countries where you're extracting the raw materials? Are the people benefiting from you? It's definitely, I think we'll get definitely a lot into that. Which takes us to the Democratic Republic of Congo, because I honestly think if we can, as Black people, if we can fix the Congo, then we can fix a great deal of what's not going right with us as Black people. The Congo, it's one of it's the richest country in the world. But
well, I don't think people know that though.
Yeah, in terms of resources, it's the richest country in the world. We'll get into that in terms of what materials and raw materials do they have. But then it's the poorest in terms of quality of life. So then you need to ask yourself, how is there such a big disconnect between these resources that the Congo has got and the quality of life, and in terms of the output and the living conditions? It's and again, the usual suspects is the Europeans, it's the French, it's the British, it's the Canadians, it's the Australians, right? Of course, they're gonna lie. Now what they do is now they've developed a straw man argument now, where they say China is causing immense suffering in Africa, which is not true at all. Yes, I mean, we're going to talk about China, obviously, which is part of its own
Oh yeah,
expansionism.
we especially we have to talk about China.
But for a European to tell us that China is causing immense suffering in Africa, it's quite a big lie. It's totally different from what the Europeans are doing and have done previously. So it's totally very, very different. I always say China is the, it's a virus. I say a virus in cause, but it's a virus that always remembers that in order to remain alive, you must, keep the
Well,
host alive.
I like to bring up the fact of whenever they talk about what they brought to Africa or what they brought to any indigenous civilization, you can't get credit when you are the one who tear down the civilization, you burn it to the ground, and then you come back and then you give relief aid. You can't ignore what you did in the first place to make it to that point. We got to remember, at the time when Europe, they were literally still living, in basically mud huts virtually. In Africa, there was literal, what was it? Actual plumbing in parts of Africa. There were pyramids, magnificent kingdoms that were there, and there was nothing in Europe. And we got to remember how far ahead Africa was in Europe, and how much of anything that was ever built in Europe got its genesis or its beginning from information that was got from Africa. And I know I use Egypt colloquially because it's easier to point to that one real quick. But there were other civilizations. There were especially going all the way up and down the Nile. There were plenty of civilizations that were going on that were prominent, that were doing things, and that's not even factoring in some of the stuff that was going on in Babylon or Assyria and all of these other areas that were far established far before Europe was. And so that needs to be taken in. I mean, it's funny to me when Americans bring up China and they make it like China is such a bad people, or even Russia dealing with Africa, when all it is every nation has their own autonomy, correct? And so they're going to try to do what's in the best interest of their people. So let's just say that for intents and purposes, well, you're South Africa, yeah, so you can represent South Africa. And let's say I'm China. I want to build China up. I want the people of China to have prosperity. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to figure out what's the best deal I can get out of South Africa. South Africa is going to be trying to work on what's the best deal that they can get out of China. And that's what we call business. It's not anything evil about that. Now, are you going to have sometimes where one company or one country is going to, get the better of a deal? Of course, that happens. That's what, trade is all about.
Yeah, it's the art of business. That's the art of business.
Exactly, the art of business. But the difference, what we need to always focus on is at least they're doing business and trade, and they're not doing it at the end of a rifle or a gun like the Western powers have decided to do. And so you can't go through centuries of genociding, theft, robbery, murder, genociding, all of those things, cruel treatment, and all the likes, and then start saying these people are bad over here. I mean, the gall for me that you would even have that mentality that you can look at these other people in a negative light with your history. And and you brought up Congo earlier. A lot of people don't know, and you can look this up. The Pope out of Rome at the time of what was his name? Leopold III. Mm-hmm. This is a very key part of history, which most of you guys should know about. Leopold III, at the same time, which was leading up to the Holocaust, When that was going on, the Pope went through the Congo, and he was blown away at how much more beautiful and how much more regal and advanced and sophisticated and wealthy than the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, he's blown away when they got gold encrusted everything, and he's going into the Congo like, whoa, we're not even doing it like this. And in that short amount of time, Leo the Third, Leopold, he goes in there and he ravages the place. He commits a genocide on that place, a Holocaust that's 3 times worse than what happened in Germany. But that gets no attention at all in Western media. It's only focused on what happened in Germany. I mean, it's kind of like what's going on with the whole Ukraine situation. Focus all on Ukraine. Dump more money in 3 months to Ukraine than you've given out to all the Middle East, for the stuff for over 20 years. Give out more in 3 months to these people. And what do we see? A correlation. When it's white, you guys care. When it's not white people, you don't really care, because right now the worst humanitarian cause that's been ongoing has been what's going on in Yemen. And that's not being talked about or focused on because they are melanated people.
Yeah. I mean, talking about Ukraine, I think when this whole confrontation started, it's all about narrative control, because now it's called, they call it the Russian war in Ukraine. And I always say it's not a Russian war. That's a Western war in Ukraine. If any Russia is trying to protect the Ukrainians, of course, I mean, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, so you cannot wish away that the ties between the Russian people and the Ukrainians. And then now we've got NATO, we've got EU, we've got the Biden-led USA going in there. They're sending arms of war to Ukraine. They're arming the Nazis there and causing all sorts of untold suffering. And when Russia intervenes, because a threat to Ukraine, it's a threat to Russia that cannot be, wished away, right? If you are brothers with someone, a threat to your brother is a threat to you. So that's what's happening. And Russia is all that Russia is doing is really trying to protect the Ukrainians from the West. And not only the Ukrainians, but also protect itself, because after Ukraine, they're coming for Russia, because Russia is the main target. Yeah, that's what it's always been like that. Russia has always been a target. So it's not going to end with Ukraine. So if Russia just sits back and allows them to set base undisrupted in Ukraine, then, they're going to be at a way better position to destroy Russian civilization, because that's what they always do. They destroy civilizations. That's what they specialize in. So Russia is justified in doing what it's doing. They're trying to stop what's happening that side. But then you will see that the biggest investment that the establishment has made is in media, because that's where you control the narratives, right?
Yep.
And they used to have mainstream media, CNN and all that stuff. But now it goes a step further now, because there's social media now, right? At least we are free to share our views there. But now what they do, they censor us. If you say something that's really does not align with what they're all about, then you get censored, your account gets suspended, or you get flagged and all that stuff. It's all about narrative control, because they understand that if you control the thinking patterns, and then you're gonna cruise through with whatever evil agenda you have. So that's why now they'll justify why is the USA giving Ukraine? Well, how much is it? Is it 49 billion or something like that?
Yeah, right around 50.
Yeah, isn't there enough problems in the USA facing black people? That's it.
I mean, oh boy, that's a lot that I could jump into from that. I mean, there's so much that could be, should be, done in America alone before even focusing on any of those. Like, I don't know if you heard what Nancy Pelosi was saying about, well, if you think of whenever we're sending money over there to Ukraine, just think, and she started going into Bible scripture. I'm not going to do it because that'll start pissing me off because that lady just annoys me. But I like to tell people, because I hear some people who they'll kind of do this tepid defense of what Russia's doing, and I'll give a full-throated defense. If we have a beef and there is a middle ground that we've established that, hey, this is middle ground, do not cross into this middle ground. We need to have this buffer zone. It's for my safety and it's for yours. So if we're trying to be fair, we're not going to go across this. The U.S. is the one who constantly always breaks the rules. And then you have, like Law says here, white media. They love to sit there and say, but Russia doesn't have the right to. What are you talking about? This is about your own protection, and your own sovereignty and protecting that. You literally have an enemy, and the U.S. is their enemy, who is conniving, who lies, who cheats, and who will abuse every opportunity they can to get the upper hand. And so what? They should just sit back and basically wait till the U.S. and all of the NATO powers have them completely encircled and then fight back. No, this is the logic which Americans have. Well, you shouldn't do anything, even if they're doing bad. They did. That's how you get ran the fuck over. Honestly, that's how you get. And I know that mentality is because these people grew up in the suburbs and they don't understand what it is to defend or protect yourself. I mean, I know my boy Law's out there. He can understand this. In the Black community, like where I grew up, you had to fight. It's not well, maybe you have to. If you don't, you will be bullied. You will be taken advantage of. You will be robbed. You have to set that barrier so people know, okay, I can't push them past this point. Because the moment they know they can push you past that point, they are going to push you past that point. They are going to say, oh, well, this is an easy mark right here, and I'm going to take advantage of you. And Russia, because they, as far as, because now they're not even really recognizing them as European anymore. They're starting to put them in the East. And so because in Europe, they're being so alienated, it's only a matter of time. And think about it. They're the number 2 superpower in the world. The U.S. wants to bury them. They've always wanted to. I mean, if you look at our entertainment, everything that I've watched growing up concerning Russia, 99% of the time, Russia is made to be the bad guy, always. And what that's doing is to form in your psyche that Russia is bad, Russia's bad, Russia's bad. So anything we ever do to Russia, or anything the United States, not we, because this is not, they doing their own shit, not me. I'm not taking no ownership of anything the U.S. does. But what the U.S. does, it's to justify. It's to give us self-defense. So what you do is you automatically give that benefit of the doubt. It's just like in America. If you were here and you're standing there having a discussion with a cop to explain what the situation is going on, and a white woman is standing there, he's already mentally engineered through this media to start listening to the white woman's perspective over yours, valuing her opinion over yours. And that's what our media does. They make us the white knight on the horse, and every other nation is the bad guy. And so you have to fight through that, that brainwashing, which our media does on making themselves always the good guy. I tell everybody, America, actually, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan or not, but I tell everybody, America is the Empire. America is the Death Star, which is cruising through, and everybody else are the rebels, basically. That's what's going on. America is the Borg from Star Trek, trying to, bring everybody in, make everybody under their umbrella.
Yeah, they just want to make everyone toe the line. Really, that's what it's all about. And in as much as they use the media to control the narrative, but then they go a step further now, because remember, it starts with the schooling system. If you look at the syllabus that gets taught from primary school all the way to university, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always say to my friends that show me someone that graduated from these prestigious universities like Harvard that's really fighting for Black people. That's just doing right. You won't find any of that person. So it's all these prestigious institutions. They're so focused in miseducation. You're told that you're going there to get the best of higher education, but you're going the best of miseducation. That's what you get there. And when they come out, those people, they are the biggest problem now, especially for us as Black people, because now the world now that we have now is, before we even get into a direct conflict or confrontation with the European, we must first struggle with our Black brothers that have come out of those prestigious institutions, because they believe in this white superiority complex so much that they, some of them, I'm sure they do wish they could wash away their own Blackness, because this savior complex.
That's a problem here. It is a problem here in the U.S.
Yeah, and they get paid. They get paid well for all that stuff now, which also is a big problem, because now these people, when they come out, they're so focused on themselves, on their own self-aggrandizement. It's about their families. It's about the people close to them. It's no longer about the Black community. What is the impact of your action on the entire Black community? What is this going to lead to? So it's all about themselves. But because they're getting paid so well to be the kind of people that they are, and then they're ready to fight for the white men. And I can guarantee you that if today a war was to break out, let's say in South Africa, for example, it's a revolution that's happening. I can assure you that there is no white person that's going to go into the park or carrying a gun. They're going to sit back. It's going to be Black people fighting alone, just that the other ones are representing the white people, and then you've got the Black people, as it were, that are pushing the Black struggle. That's where we are at now. So it's all this miseducation that's happening, and it's a cycle. It's repetitive, because it must be repeated over and over again, right? And talking about the family values, like we touched on it earlier. Now it gets to a point now where kids are being socialized, to normalize all this perversion that's happening here, that a man can really get pregnant, that it's okay for a man to marry another man. But the truth of the matter is, there is nothing natural.
Well, I was gonna throw in, because I don't know if you know about this, but like I was telling somebody, I said, when we were in school, if we even learned our teacher's first name, we were like, oh shoot, her name is Jill. That was like, because you didn't learn anything about your teacher's personal life. Your teacher was just your teacher. It was all about education. That was it. You weren't getting into the teacher's politics or their sexuality and all this. And so now when I hear about like Chris talks about how his nephew up in New York, how one of the teachers is going into about how homosexuality and about drag and all that to like second graders. And it's like, even in high school, I didn't know jack about what my teachers had personally, and I prefer to not know that. I don't need to know what you got going on in your personal business. Keep that shit to yourself. And if I was a parent, my point is, keep that shit to yourself. I don't need to know it. If in your household you guys want to do whatever you guys want to do over there, that is your shit. But don't bring that into the schools and start trying to influence kids at an early age that they need to know about these things.
And then they counter it by saying, oh, well, already at school, kids are being taught about straight people, a father and a mother. I mean, which is total BS, because I would say there's nothing called a straight man. There's a man. That's it.
Well, yeah, they come up with these terms.
The opposite of that.
You're a cis man. I'm like, don't call me none of that shit. I'm just a man. I'm not going to be living on this earth now for 41 years, and you're going to just redefine what words mean now for me.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to deal with some 18, 19-year-olds who want to run around and say, well, this is what it means, so everybody needs to know. Keep that in your own circle. Again, Yipper brought up a good point. He says a good amount of Black Americans will fight with the oppressor, with the oppressive power if civil war breaks out. Well, here's something a lot of people don't know. I don't know if you know this, or some of our African viewers know this, but America still is like a 60% white country. Mm-hmm. But do you know majority of the military is still mostly black and brown people, and the chunk of lower class whites. You still are going to have a lot of those upper middle class and white people who are going to be exempt from these types of wars.
So basically what you're saying is if at any time the USA decides that it's sending the military to Ukraine, it's going to be lots of Black people that are going to be dispatched there, and you're going to be blown up by the Russians.
That's exactly what I mean. The Black population in America, they say it's anywhere between 14 and 18%. Out of that 14 to 18%, the amount, the percentage-wise, who go into the military is astronomical. And the same in the Latino community. The military in America is full, and not to leave out Native Americans also, are full of those three groups of people at a much higher rate than there are whites per capita. And it's the same thing with the prison system. You go into the prison systems, Black natives and Latinos are the bulk of the prison population, when they are less than, they're combined are less than half of what make up the population. I mean, in America, I think it's still out of roughly 350 million people or more. America is about 220 million white people. And Black, Latino, Native Americans total to roughly about like 5% we're about 5 million. The Black population is somewhere around, I think, 40 million. And then the Latino population is somewhere like 55 million. And then the rest of that breaks up into various different Asian groups.
And what's the ratio of Black Americans in corporate America compared to the
I mean, we're talking about maybe like 5%, 6%. I mean, when we're talking about the higher levels of corporate America, yeah, you're gonna have a couple who, they have a desk job, but how many are sitting in some boardrooms?
Yeah,
you're gonna have out of the let's say there's 100 people on the board, probably got 2 Black faces in there, if that. And I mean, and maybe one of them is what we call passing, where they're actually Black, but a lot of white people might think that they might be Italian or something else, and not realize that they're actually Black. And so they don't really even count them. They find out at some Christmas party, oh, wait a minute, you're Black? It's one of those things where it's kind of an accident.
Yeah, and they tell them, oh, well, you don't look Black. You don't think like Black people. And unfortunately, if that kind of a person, is likes extracting value from praises from white people, then they kind of like internalize that. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then they start giving all of us Black people a very bad attitude. And I think some of the Black people that are sitting in the boardrooms, I mean, they're just non-executive, man. It's just what do they call it? Nowadays, there is a term that's being used. It's called diversity and inclusivity. That's what they use. You just have face there just to show that, we're diverse. We're a diverse organization, but it just ends there with the face. In terms of decision making, there's just no way that a Black person can be sitting there in the boardroom and making life decisions.
I'll give you a perfect example, and this is telling. Remember, I just gave you the demographics roughly. of America. The Jewish population in America is about 2%. Oh, I think it totals to, maybe about 3 million people. Or is one, I think it's 1% in America, 2% worldwide. Out of, America's history of the Supreme Court, there's been 8 Jewish people in the Supreme Court. Black natives and Latinos combined have gotten maybe 4. And so how do you have like over 100 million people not even close to have the power of 3 million people?
And those 4 people in the Supreme Court, does it include the latest appointee?
Yes.
What's the name?
That includes Ketanji Jackson Brown.
Yes, the one
because you had her, you had Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
You've had I'm blanking on his name right now. Thurgood Marshall. Then you have Sotomayor. There's another. I think there's one other Latino out there that I'm missing. But think about it. That's only like 4, maybe 5. There might be somebody I'm missing out there, but that's it. The rest have been white, basically, and then a chunk of those white have been Jewish. But
yeah,
that's what you get. The first Black woman, 250 years of the Supreme Court, the first Black woman.
Well, she might be the first Black woman, but also she could not define what a woman is. So we've got a problem there.
Well, here's another thing also. Here's something which I don't think is often noticed. You don't see a lot of Black women who get to this position who are not in an interracial relationship. So most of these Black women are married to a white spouse. That's the same thing with Kamala Harris. It's the same. It's almost like if you do decide that you want to marry a Black spouse, you know that you are going to get limited in some of these things, because it's almost like, well, I don't know if I can trust them unless I see they got a white person with them. That's I mean that could be an off take, but I don't know. Chat, let me know what you guys think.
Yeah, and I think with interracial relationships, what happens is it's always the Black person that must be accountable to the white system. It's never the white person that will then assume some form of Blackness or empathy towards Black people. No, the Black person is going to account to the white system, and it happens the world over where you've got these interracial relationships. And I think what the system does well also is, if they put you in a very strategic position like they've done with Ketanji, they definitely make sure that they will collect as much dirt as they can about her, because then she's going to be blackmailed for the rest of her life. There's absolutely no way. The moment she tries.
I don't know if you saw what the Republicans were about. I mean, and I honestly, let's put the disclaimer out there. I hate both of them. I hate Democrats. I hate Republicans. I hate all elected officials. None of them are worth their salt on anything. But that said, the Republicans' major thing that they were focused on, besides the pedophilia stuff, was, are you going to be hard enough on Black people? Basically, without saying it, what they were saying is, you ain't gonna lighten up on the Blackies, are you? I mean, if you're gonna get in there, you got to make sure to keep your foot on their neck. And that was the approach of many of the Republicans.
And then, I mean, which brings us to Barack Obama. Yes. I'm asking this rhetorically. I've got my views about him. I'm asking a rhetorical question. Did he do anything to improve the lives of Black people in America? Are Black people better off now that they've had a Black president?
I'll tell you this: Obama actually, I felt like, made relations between Black Americans and Africans worse. And see, this is something this is why I tell you guys need to have more have conversations watch more conversations with melanated people because we have a different perspective. We're going to ask some different questions, and so you're going to get some different answers. Obama was never looked at, I felt like, from a lot of black people. Well, at first, when he first got elected, because the black people, oh, okay, he's a black face, we'll kind of accept him in. But when you start going off and you start not doing some of the things we expect, eventually we start like, hey man, let me check this dude's background. Who is this dude really about? And so Obama, we looked at him as more, his black connection is to Africa, and it's loose at that. So he's more in the vein of his mother, who I say people do some research on his mother and stepfather, Mr. Sotero, and look into that background and see if it's not some things that, raise the eyebrows a little bit. But his part of his upbringing is from Kansas. The other part is from Hawaii. And then he comes into Chicago and gets his black credentials by hanging around Dr. Jeremiah Wright, the Reverend out of Chicago. It's the same thing with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris spends part of her upbringing in a more affluent upper middle class area in California, then goes to Canada, gets her upbringing in Canada in an Indian community, and we're talking about Indian as in Far East Indian, and then comes back, goes to a black university and gets her black cred, and then and they both run on this whole more Afro-American centric mantra when neither of them have a real connection at all to either of the communities.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that explains it all. I mean, I think even in the case for Barack Obama in Africa, really, he's done so much suffering in Africa. Let's look at Libya, for example.
Oh, yeah.
United States, when all that whole NATO invasion of Libya happened and they smoked out Colonel Gaddafi. As a black person, like we told that Obama is black, you would have expected some form of empathy, but no. I think even up to this day, he feels great. He feels good about what he did in Libya. He really totally, if you look at the state of Libya right now and what it was before they killed Gaddafi, it's a very sad story. Mm-hmm. And these are the people that we told that they are the bastions of civilization. We must all look up to these people that go around. I mean, because the thing is, I always say the destruction that the USA and the West is causing to the world, it's not hidden anyway. It's right there in front of our eyes. You just need to look at things and question. You'll get all your answers. It's not hidden anyway. Look at Syria, what they did there in Syria. You just need to look at the damage they've done there and the conditions of Syria before they did their invasion there. With Obama, also what he did is in Sudan, for those who don't know, so Sudan is one of the African countries, right? So now it's split. So all in all, Africa has got 55 countries, right? Mm-hmm. I know most people always, especially in the West and in the USA, they always think Africa is one country, of which it's not. So Africa is a continent made of different countries. So
I also wanted to add in there. Let's keep in mind Africa. The size of the continent itself is roughly the size if you took all of South America, Central America, Mexico, and the United States and crammed it all into one place. Yeah. That's how big Africa is.
Yes, it's definitely not what the image that we get shown on the mainstream, that this is the size of Africa. It's way bigger than that.
Yeah, well, like what we talked about a little bit before we hopped on here, before live, the difference between the Mercator map and the Gail Peters map. And they acknowledged that they made the European countries larger out of racism than the actual projections which you would see on the Gail Peters map.
Yeah. So I was still on Sudan. So Africa has got 55 countries. Sudan was the country number 55. But So what happened is obviously it was one country and then it was now split into two. Now you've got North Sudan and you've got South Sudan, right? And that's one of Barack Obama's flagship products in Africa. So what they've done now, Sudan is very rich in oil resources, right? So what they did is we're going to split these people, and it's also according to they use religion to split up. Okay, that side, the north, is mostly it's into Islam, Muslim, and then the south is mostly Christianity and stuff. So we're going to split them up because once we split them up, and then we create tensions between the two, so that there is never peace. So because where there is unity, it's difficult to conquer. You must first divide so that they're always on each other's throats. Now, talking about the oil, South Sudan is got the most oil deposits. It's very rich in oil. But the logistics for moving the oil and all that stuff, it's in northern Sudan. So the oil is of no value if it cannot move anyway, if you take out the logistics. So now you've got these two countries now that have, I mean, it was one country, it was split into two now. The south cannot survive without the north, and the north cannot really survive without the south. And now and again they have to be constantly fighting for control and for for extraction of value from the oil and the logistics and so forth. Over and above that, then the USA then created these tensions between the tribes, different tribes of South Sudan, where now, in as much as they are now an independent country and so forth, but there's constant wars happening between the tribes. And it's all driven by the USA. So that instability must continue. That's what the USA and the West prefer. That's their model of business, actually. Just
divide
create
and
as much,
conquer.
yes, they create as much instability as you can, and then you extract the value from that. And then they create this savior complex where they create instability, and then they go in there as the saviors and to try to find a solution. And the solution that they're presenting at face value, it looks like they've got your interest at heart. No, the solution is exactly what's going to benefit the USA. They go a step further. You must look at when there's, I'm sure you have lots of natural disasters and floods and all that stuff. We had floods recently in KZN in South Africa. Very, very terrible conditions. Homes were being washed away and so forth. But now what's going to happen now is the United Nations. I always say the United Nations is just a proxy of the USA. Remember, it's its own formation. It was formed initially as the League of Nations by the USA, but the USA did not become a member of the League of Nations. It formed it, but didn't become a member of that, right? So now they've started sending some UN people to the affected areas. So this was all planned way in advance. Now they're coming in as saviors. I've got my own views and theories about some of these floods. I think it's stuff that we will talk about in terms of this whole climate change thing that's
Well,
being
well,
pushed.
well, what if I add a little, and this is like a formula which I know the U.S. because I don't know if you know, I'm former military also.
Yeah.
In my military background, I had time. You got to be careful how I say some of this stuff. Dealing with certain organizations within the military who had coordination with various other operations and with particular projects, we'll say, and some of that involving the State Department, some of that involving CIA and NSA and things like that. So one thing I know which they would do, which I've heard this from a couple of Navy SEALs, is that they will start some kind of division, a false flag, whatever, to get factions going against each other. Once they can get that going, they frame the narrative in the media, get that out there quickly. Then after they've done that and they got these two, warring and fighting, then the U.S. steps in to be the peace broker. And so this is just a theme which they've always done. And it's, I don't know if you're familiar with the Willie Lynch letters, but this is just like Willie Lynch, the divide and conquer, going all the way back to the slave times.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly how they roll. So now they're coming in as saviors. Now it's going to perpetuate the attitude that the USA has got the interest of everyone who's affected at heart, when that's not the case. I mean, they started the problem and then they come in as the problem solver. And once they
Mhm.
come in there, you guarantee they're making sure they're not there primarily to assist you with whatever you're going through. They are primarily there for their own interests. They're doing their own scouting and setting up military bases and all that stuff. It's even worse now, because I feel like now we've reached the advanced stage of this whole new world order that they've been pushing for. And you see it in their arrogance, in how they carry themselves, and in how they push certain narratives. It's like they've reached that point where now they're going to use force to really
Mhm.
have their way. So, like for example, I was using the case of floods that happened. So now, first things first, maybe let me just give a bit of some background about South Africa. It's more than 80% black people, right? So total opposite of what you have in the USA, where
Oh
you've
yeah.
got like 60% white people. Yeah, it's like more than 80% black people, right?
Mm.
Um, but the economy and the means of production, 80% of it is in the hands of white people, who form the
Mhm.
minority. I think they probably form 8 to 10% of the population, but they
Wow.
control 80% of the means of production. And then under the white people, then you've got the Indians, and then you've got the colored communities. The black people, we last there in terms of
Which can you expand on the colored community, because a lot of people don't it gets a different understanding in the US. I'm a little familiar with it, but just expand on it a little bit so the audience will know what you mean.
Okay, so what we have here, this side is where with it was set up as a hierarchy of some sort, where you've got the white people at the top, and then there's the Indian community. Obviously, we all know they from India, and then the colored. In most cases, the colored people, they are what's the word that I'm looking for? It's a combination of really what's there's a word that I'm looking for that I want to use. So it's
Like
black and
biracial.
white family, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the mother is black and the father is white. So then obviously the child then is called colored. Good example is Trevor Noah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our export to you. You can keep him there.
No, you can take him back. You can take him back.
His father is Swiss, right? He's from Switzerland.
Yes. He was fine for like one comedy special. Then after that, he sold out. Woo, boy, he sold out quick.
Man,
He's what we would call a house. You guys can
I
finish the
think
rest.
he sold out from when he started, before he even got to the USA, right? So
Mm.
his mother is Xhosa, and the father is Swiss, so he's colored. So the word that I was looking for, it's a hybrid. Hybrid, that's what it is. So with Trevor Noah, if you do some digging and try to understand how this person ended up hosting that show that's big in the
The
USA.
Daily Show.
Yeah, the Daily Show. He's rubbing shoulders with the big guns in the White House, and in business. He's playing tennis with Bill Gates and all that stuff. I mean, that should be enough to get you on a journey of really finding out, how did this man get to this position. I'm certain there's many uh, people in the USA that could have, gotten that role that he got in there. And a bigger part of me believes now and suspects that, he's actually being groomed to eventually become maybe the South African president. It's not too far fetched. They did it in
Ooh,
Ukraine with the comedian in Ukraine. You
they
can see
sure.
what's happening.
They did do that. I didn't even think about that. That's where Zelensky comes from. He got
Yeah,
in good with the billionaires, and the
yeah.
billionaires, and they.
Mhm.
Oh
So
wow! I didn't think about
it's
that.
it's all a ploy, it's all a plan. So his rise, he started at the time of his rise. Remember, there was I don't know if you know him, President Jacob Zuma. He was the president of South
Yeah, yeah,
Africa.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So from 2009 to 2017, he was president of South Africa. And it was during that period that Trevor Noah started rising and getting popular. You know, locally, obviously, he started doing shows in the US and stuff. But the biggest selling point of his was how he was portraying President Jacob Zuma, how he would mock him, how he would make fun of him, how he would make very, very bad jokes about him, right? The reasoning for that, and now that I talk about it, it wasn't out of his, comedic talent, if we may coin a phrase. It was a narrative that was being driven, because from all the shows that he was doing and mocking President Jacob Zuma, lots of people developed certain attitudes towards Jacob Zuma. Now, who's Jacob Zuma? Jacob Zuma was a thorn in the flesh for the West, right? So
Definitely.
he understood, he still understands the balance of forces when it comes to power. He understands the geopolitics. He understands the role that Russia and China played in liberating Africa from the West. And he was very instrumental in the formation of the BRICS, the BRICS
Oh
economies.
yeah, yeah. Brazil, Russia,
Brazil,
India,
Russia,
China, and
India.
South Africa.
Yes,
Yeah.
was very instrumental in the formation of BRICS, and even locally here,
I'll
he.
say, remind me off camera or in the DMs, and I gotta
Yeah.
tell you something, about the bricks and the.
Okay. Yeah. So he even locally, yeah. I mean, like, we've got a systemic problem, like in terms, like I've already told you that the white people own 80% basically of the economy, right?
Well, but here's something crazy, and please remember your point. Don't forget it,
Yeah.
because I know I can easily take you off topic. But this is what a lot of people don't realize is the common theme. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, if you're in different parts of South America or Central America, even if you have higher populations of blacks and Latinos and all that, those Spaniards who were descendants, those Germans who fled out after the Holocaust, or after World War II, let's say that, who some of them were literal Nazis. Their descendants came and took power in a lot of these areas throughout the Americas. So some of this racism that you deal with, because a lot of people don't realize there's racism even in these areas throughout the Latino community, that comes from that white power dominance who are controlling those areas too. So it doesn't matter if you go to Africa, if you go to Latin America, throughout the United States, even in the UK, it's still that white group across the
Yes.
board who is still controlling everything everywhere for the most part.
Yeah, racism is always the constant. It's the constant wherever you go. It's racism. There's no other word.
That's why I always say a white supremacist world that we live in.
Yeah. So just to get back to the point that I was making. So now we've got a systemic problem where, obviously, in terms of the economics, it's just not benefiting black people. South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. At the same time, South Africa is being marketed and advertised as a country with the best constitution in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you must now try to strike a balance and get some understanding. How is it that a country that's just got more than 80% black people, it's said to be having the best constitution in the world, and then it's got the widest inequality gap in the world, where the black people, the majority, are at a very, very, very big disadvantage?
Mm-hmm.
So then you realize that, okay, then one of the key tenets of the constitution is that it protects the property rights, right,
Mm-hmm.
of of white people, as it were, of stolen property, basically. So we going. That's what the Constitution does. Like that's where they made sure that the Constitution must protect the interests of white people. So you need to be very clear, be express in terms of property ownership, that so that you make it difficult one day for black people to say no, we need to reclaim our land.
That's the same thing that is being done in Israel with the Palestinians, because they learned that off of what was going on in South Africa, off of apartheid. They literally took those same lessons and applied them there. Sorry, it just reminded me, because the parallels to what we see going on in Israel Palestine literally got like all of its building blocks out of what happened in South Africa, and what leads to, I believe, that racial and wealth stratification that you still have in place in South Africa to this day.
Yeah. So I mean, so then what happens is if you were gonna say you want to reclaim the land using the Constitution, which is basically the document of life for any country, then you're gonna have difficult problems in Parliament, right? The ANC is the governing party. There's many other black opposition-led parties. They might make the laws. They haven't really, because the Parliament must debate the laws and make the laws, and then finally it goes to the Constitutional Court, which basically is that's where the white power structure really focused on in the Constitutional Court, because they realize that, okay, these people are the majority, so chances are we're going to have more black people in Parliament, and we cannot really trust them, in as much as we've bought some of them and then promised them this and so forth, but we cannot really trust those people. Some of them can pass on, or they can move out of Parliament, and then someone else might come into Parliament who's more radical in terms of economic transformation. So then they're like, okay, we've made peace with the fact that these people are there, they make the bulk of the population, so they might try to come with some laws here that will benefit the black people and disadvantage the white person. So rather, let us make South Africa a constitutional democracy. Right.
They can't have a Winnie Mandela popping up on them.
Winnie Mandela was the best person ever, unlike Nelson Mandela. I'm sure you read one of the articles that I did about Nelson Mandela.
Oh, yes.
Is him and Obama, they're the biggest poison that we've had as black people.
I got something for you real quick here from Riddle Me.
Yeah.
Apartheid ended with no land redress, no wealth redress, no punishment for beneficiaries of apartheid. Did apartheid end? Ooh, good question.
Interesting. He asked a very, very interesting question.
Just like my shirt says here, free-ish since 1865.
Yeah.
Are we really free?
So I'm gonna make just send me the artwork for that T-shirt. I'm just gonna replace 1865 with 1994. Then I think
yes, exactly,
because that's what's happening now. Apartheid did not really end. It's alive. I mean, let us face it. It was first and foremost an economic system of subjugation, of pushing black people into the peripherals, right? And I've just said 80% of the economy is still in the hands of white people. So there's absolutely no way that you can say apartheid it's a past. We now a democratic dispensation, we're a constitutional democracy, when black people form the majority do not own the economy, do not have a say in what happens and the direction that the country takes. So it's still alive. I mean, we nothing has changed. Nothing of material value has changed from black for black people. What has happened is the only change that we had is to get some civil liberties, right? The rights to work in job exhibit, and obviously.
Well, it sounds like you got the rights which we got in the civil rights era. Oh yeah, you get to go, and now you can go and sit in a restaurant with a white person together.
Yes, but exactly, and still, and still you get some form of racism there, right? Especially in Cape Town. In most
Still
cases,
here. Still get
you
it
go
here too.
into a restaurant there in Cape Town, they tell you they're fully booked or something like that, or they tell you have to book via phone online. When you're booking, if you're going to put an African name, right, Gugulethu, and then chances are they're not gonna give me a slot in that restaurant even if it's open, right? But if you put a name that is going to not be outrightly black, then yeah, or you might be told, no, there's a chapel available, we can put you in, right? So it's still alive, and we got those civil rights, but we're still getting the racism, and there's no absolutely no redress for that. There's no repercussions for those people who still practice their racism. It's inherent, it's in their nature. I think that's one thing that we need to understand as Black people, that it is inherently in the nature of the European to be racist. It comes standard with them. It does not change. That's the spec for them. They need to be racist in
Yeah,
order to.
it has to be worked on to overcome and come out of it. But
Yes.
you can't be born in a racist system and not internalize many of the racist ideas. Even if you
Yes.
try to be outside of it, you still are going to get some of it by de facto. And can you have exceptions to the rule? Yes. But
Yeah.
for the most part, the rule is the rule.
Exactly. The rule is the rule for the most. I mean, that's why you've got, predominantly white areas, right?
This is sad. Riddle Me says Black people have to use white names to make reservations at restaurants to get Uber to work properly. That's messed up. It's just like when we had the cabs in the U.S. They weren't pulling over for Black people. And if you want to get better jobs, it's a reason why people will take a name like Chandrea and just say, my name is Sean.
Yeah.
That they do that also because we have a difference in, like you go and try to get a loan from a bank. You might get that loan, but you're going to get a much higher interest rate. You might not be able to move into this area or get this house because of it's so similar. So I'm sorry. I'll let you
go. No. I mean, it happens. Yeah. I mean, like we told there's a property boom in Cape Town. People are buying homes in Cape Town. I've seen some people tweet and say stuff that, the estate agent confirmed that this property is available, come and view and so forth. And then the person goes in there. As soon as they get there, then suddenly the estate agent realizes that, damn, this is a Black person. And then the stories start coming up. But they start giving you a new price now that, they're going to really try to push it. So that is difficult because, I mean, if white people, control 80% of the economy, chances are a Black person is not going to afford the bulk of all these expensive properties that are in the cities, especially Cape Town, that side. So it's the racism. It's still there. It's structural, right? So the civil rights that we're talking about, yes, man, it's like you only seeing the roof of the house, but the foundation of it, which is not clearly visible to everyone. That's where the structure really is. That's where the heart of the structure is. So it's inherently a racist society. So that's why.
I guess I'll ask this question here. Good morning, Prop. Prop says Gugulethu is a place in South Africa. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a township in Cape Town that's called Gugulethu.
Oh, that's cool. You got a city named after you.
Yeah, man. I've got a project named after me. Isn't you call it the projects in Detroit?
Oh, project. Well, that's not great. Yeah. It's like if your name is Marcy and you go to Marcy Project, that's not really a good thing.
so it's something similar. Just that this side of the world, we call it the townships. But the thinking behind it, the structure is the same as the projects in the USA, because these townships were created purposely for economic reasons, to house Black people, so that at least they're not too far away from the industrial areas where they need to go and sweat and work for the white people. So it's the same with Soweto. I'm sure most people know about Soweto. It stands for
Okay, yeah.
Southwestern Townships, right? That's what it
Oh, okay.
stands
Because
for.
I've seen Soweto, and I wasn't sure if it was a town, city, what
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah. So it's a combination of different townships. So then Soweto is now the umbrella name, which stands for Southwestern Townships, basically. So
Mm,
that's what we have here. So yes, to answer that, brother, yes, Gugulethu, it's a township that's in Cape Town.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Marcy
would.
ain't a good thing. Hamza asked this question: were Persians in Africa? I would say, if you look at North Africa, there are a lot of Persians there right now.
Yes, yeah, in North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, and that side, yeah.
Yeah, all the way across the top, yeah, literally from Morocco all the way over to, you know, the parts of the northern part of the Nile.
Yeah.
They've moved in, and like when I brought up about the Umayyad Caliphate, the Umayyad Caliphate was a mixture of Turkish and Persian people who took over a lot of that area. So yes, those are Persians. Um, Plus, black people here are more patriotic than the white man. Some of them are. Sad to say that. I don't like to think about that. That's yeah. You well, what it is I think you're starting to have a difference generationally, and that's where the divide is starting to come in more and more because
Yeah.
you have the younger generation where as they're starting to become more aware of this knowledge and how things haven't changed. And it's also in America, and I doubt this is any different than in Africa. Also, it is a generational thing and it's a wealth thing. It's a class thing. If you grew up in an upper middle class area, a predominantly white area, or more of a mixed area, you have some different views than somebody like me who grew up in a predominantly black area, well, black and Latino area. And the whites were the minority in my area where I grew up. Like literally where our houses were, you might have say maybe a 5% white rate there, but I went to a school that maybe had about 50% white. And well, actually, I wouldn't even say that much. I'd say probably 30% white, and then the bulk were black and Latinos in my school.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. In most cases, you'll notice that the views of black people that have lived or grew up in white areas is quite different because I think when they growing up, which is part of the socialization process, obviously, their realities differ. They do not understand when you then tell them that um, white people control this economy. They own 80% of this economy. And then this person stays there in an expensive suburb of Cape Town. That's where he grew up in. Um, he does not relate at all.
Mhm.
In most cases, he doesn't even identify as a black person. Um,
I've met some of those. I'll just say some Nigerians who
yeah,
I don't know what it is. Half Nigerians are like they feel like they have that similar, and then the other half of Nigerians they almost seem like it's just a white man in blackface. I mean, I don't get it.
yeah. Here, like one good example is one of the ANC presidents. I don't know if you know him, Oliver Tambo. He lived remember when the ANC was banned in the 60s, obviously then
Hmm.
it started operating from outside the country in different areas. So he lived his life then in affluent, is it Bristol? I'm not so sure if it's Bristol or it's another city, but in the United Kingdom, in Britain. So
Yeah.
that's where his kids grew up in. They were socialized there. That's where his life was, and so forth. And I remember in uh, what happened in 1994. One of his daughters came to SA like for the first time when she was an adult, and she talks about how she could not identify with any black person, and she spoke about almost like in a bragging way about how British she was. And it goes back to what you spoke about earlier in terms of that we have this challenge where we've got black people that have been socialized in these white areas, and their view of the world is totally different. And
Mm,
unfortunately, those are the same people that are in a better position to occupy strategic positions in corporate America or in government. Not that they can really make any difference anyway, because at the end of the day, like we said, you are a black person. And the system, yes, it can put you into different stratas to say this one is a clever black and this one is just um, a stupid black. But bottom line is we are black people. So the system knows that, it's the artificial intelligence. They do it now with the banks, right? If
yeah.
if if you stay in Soweto right now,
Hmm.
and you're going to apply for a housing loan, you stay in Soweto, and I stay in expensive suburb, let's say I'm in Stellenbosch or somewhere in Cape Town in the Western Cape, right? We earn similar salaries. We apply for the same house that we want, right? So you apply for a mortgage or bond with your bank. Now what they've done is they've got these artificial intelligence systems where obviously when you're applying you have to put in where you stay, right? So you're
Hmm.
gonna put in Soweto and I'm gonna put Stellenbosch. Already that puts you at a disadvantage because there's biases that are infused into these AI systems, right? To say, okay, he stays in Soweto, chances are that he's black, and chances are that he's probably going to default. We cannot really trust him, right?
Yeah.
So even if it happens that you're earning more than me, but the fact that you stay in a black area,
Hmm.
already you getting less marks, and chances are even if you get the funding, right, your interest rates are going to be very different. You're going to be
Yeah.
paying more than
Mhm.
what someone who stays in a white area will ever do. So it's the racism that's
Mhm.
happening now. They talk about this whole technological revolution and encouraging kids to study, what do they call it, STEM, science
Oh yeah,
related,
yeah. I
all
know
that
about
stuff. I mean,
yeah, science, technology. I
yeah.
can't remember. Yeah, education, mathematics, or something like that.
Yeah, I always say yes. I mean, it's good. I mean, if a child is good in mathematics, let them pursue it. But now it becomes now very sinister when you see that there's a deliberate intention to push kids towards a certain profession or a certain discipline. There's a deliberate ploy to pull these kids away from
Well, well, what
humanity.
well, what it is well, oh, definitely, definitely. If you look at what like the Clintons were talking about, when they were talking about people losing their job to NAFTA and the jobs being shipped overseas, the manufacturing jobs, they start pushing more about, oh, we can just teach you coding. For those who don't know what coding is, that's teaching you about computer languages and how to code systems, and that's what they're trying to force more people in. Don't worry about doing technical careers. Don't worry about following artistic desires. Just get into learning how to sit behind a computer screen, and that's part of what STEM does also, to get people prepared for the Silicon Valley world, which is being pushed more and more with the emergence of technology.
Mhm.
I gotta answer a couple of these questions real quick. I'll answer Yippers first. Says, so Nigeria and Niger both mean the N word. Well, I'm black, shit. I can say it. It both means nigger. Yes, it does. It literally means the land of niggers. I figure sometimes it's better to hear it more jarring, so it makes more sense. But yes, that's literally what that means. So yes, everything about that formation was entirely being racist. Prop says, what's the deal with ADOS, Marcus? I agree with a lot of what they say, but some of them promote segregation, and I don't know if I fully understand. Well, you got to look at it like this, and I get it, Prop, you're in Canada, so it's a little bit different it's similar, but a little bit different. But the relationship with a lot of Black Americans is there's been so much distrust in America. And because of the white power structure always does, especially like from the Democratic Party, they say, oh, well, we're going to help you do this and we're going to do that. Like Joe Biden just did, literally. And then if you go back through his history, Joe Biden is over his 50 years has probably done more damage to the Black community than any politician I can name. When you start going into, he helped with Iran Contra and the pushing of drugs into our communities. He helped back a lot of that. And then leading into the prison industrial complex, he led into that. When you go into the push, when they were telling all of us, go get a degree, go get a degree, don't worry, borrow money. He's the one where a lot of these people defaulted on their loans. He made it so that they couldn't file for bankruptcies and they still were stuck with the loans. I mean, Joe Biden, majority of every negative policy that we can think of, had his hands on it. So we've always heard white people say, oh, we're going to help you, and then turn around and stab us in the back. And so that's the younger generations, a lot of them response is they feel like we need to isolate ourselves to build ourselves up first and foremost before we can even start really engaging with other people. And how we talked about like some of these different people, like especially like how I brought up Nigerians, where they'll kind of lean more to the Nordic way of doing things and the Western way of doing things, that they don't see those struggles. They don't see all the traumas and things that have went on. And so they come in like, more of the mentality, almost like a white person who's like, well, just get over everything. Shut up, quit complaining. And so a lot of American descendants of slavery kind of separate themselves a little bit away from Black people who didn't grow up with this same experience directly, because they don't want to feel like that they're being separated off or marginalized. And also, they don't want the impact of what America did specifically to Black Americans to be relegated to, oh, well, they did the same thing to everybody, so just get over it. They're like, no, America became the most powerful nation in the world off of our backs. And so there is a debt that we feel is owed to us. If you literally made trillions of dollars off of us, built the White House, built the railroads, built all of these things literally off of us, built your bloated, expansive military, which you've used to bully and basically extort most of the world, and now you sit high on the hog, you owe us. It's not a matter of feeling sorry or whatever. But this is where I separate. I feel like all of the European nations, all of these places which they've extracted from, because a big part of the diaspora out of the transatlantic slave trade, majority of the people who came out of West Africa in that transatlantic slave trade actually went to South America. Majority of them went to Brazil. So, I mean, it's like 60% went to Brazil. Don't even factor in Colombia. That's not factoring in Nicaragua, Costa Rica. That's not factoring all of these places throughout the Caribbean also. Haiti, Bermuda. I mean, you can go throughout the whole entire Puerto Rico, Cuba, all of these different places were all stops part of that transatlantic slave trade. It's just the difference is in this area, Spain did that to you. In this area, these people did that to you. So it's more of an onus on, hey, you need to be getting it from them. These people need to be getting it from them. And so I feel like all of Europe owes all pretty much all melanated people, if you really look at it that way, throughout Africa, throughout Latin America, throughout Asia also. Hamza says Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador. Black people built the United States. That's no denying that. Propaganda says, I feel that segregation is not that way. Not the way. I think dynamic you and I have Marcus is the model we need. I'm white and you're black, but there is nothing but love. Oh yeah, it's nothing but love. See, that's the thing. There's nothing but love down to the human level, but we got to think on a governmental mind, because the leaders of these countries, they don't think that way. And since we don't have any power in most of these countries, we have to think as a leader, as an ambassador for our whole communities. When you agree, Gugulethu?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, with everything that you've said. I just want to find. Yeah.
I would say I got a video too that I want to pull up where
Okay.
I want to share this, and I want to hear your take on it, because to hear out of the mouth of colonizers admitting things is beautiful. Now, do I believe that Africa is necessarily poor, like this guy's going to say in here? No. Do I believe Africa is not at its fullest potential? It could and should be. And so in that regards, it's poor. Yeah, I'll agree with that, because Africa is not like, Trevor Noah said it in his stand-up. It's not like people sitting there and flies on their head and, the Melissa Etheridge, commercials, and we need to send $5 to, this kid here in Zimbabwe. No, I mean, there are parts of there's parts of America like that. But but there are parts of Africa which are very, wealthy, and you have plenty of Black people who are doing well to a degree, and then some of them, who are literal Black billionaires. So let's not get this framing of Africa as this little, the whole entire continent is this little, third world like hellhole.
Yes, I mean, the hellhole part of it, Europe is responsible for it, but other than that, yeah.
Exactly. This is a longer clip of this. I found the short one, but have you seen this one before?
I think so, but let's play it.
Okay.
I think so. Let's play
cool.
Africa historically, sub-Saharan Africa, has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay, and Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message. It doesn't mean to say that there's nothing Africans can do. Of course there is. Okay, but this is the opposition that they're fighting. This is what it's about. Because if Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall. Okay, and that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. Okay, so this is what it's fundamentally about. What I want to show you is how these structures are operating. It's just 20 minutes, so we can't do very much, but just to give you a little bit of an idea. And why I keep the ideology part there is because we are part of the producers of ideology. At universities and academic institutions, we are complicit in this whole enterprise. Okay, so the job of many Western academics is to convince Africans they have to keep doing what they're doing. Okay, and to show them it's your fault that you're poor. It's not our fault. It's your fault that you're poor. So this is what we do in academic institutions, and I want to show that as well.
Yeah. So what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very triggering, but
Hmm.
he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
From a European, that's what it is, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's good that you played that video for any doubting Thomas out there, any black person out there that thinks we are mad when we say these things. Maybe when they hear it from the horse's mouth, it will make much more sense. What
Hmm.
this guy said there is exactly where we are. That's what Europe is doing. Without Africa, Europe ceases to exist. All these riches and all this infrastructure that they have, it ceases to exist, right? Um, let's look at the automotive industry. You've got the General Motors, Mercedes-Benz, BMW. Without the Congo, the automotive industry does not exist, right? Because that's where you're getting all your cobalt from the DRC. There's many other raw materials that are extracted from the DRC, right? Now there is a promotion of what do they call it, the EV, electric vehicles or something like that. That is going to be ran on batteries, because then you're saying you want to phase out fossil fuels, and then you want to use batteries to run the cars. But then now no one is asking, how is this battery made? Where are you getting? Because for everything, every product that gets developed, there's a raw material. Where does it come from, right? And again, it's from the Congo, right? Without the Congo, you do not have the automotive industry, right? You go to a car dealership, you find this nice car that you like. It's got nice finishing, paint, and everything. Now you must ask yourself, uh, what's the supply chain journey of the paint? What was used in making automotive paint? If you do your research, it takes you to Madagascar. That's in Africa again, right?
Hmm.
You look at them, your phone companies, Apple, Samsung, and all of those phones, right? Beautiful phones. You find people making fun of each other that, yo, I'm using iPhone, you using Android, and playing all that stuff, right? And you using Samsung and so forth. But what key raw material was used in the development of those mobile devices? Right. Again, it's coltan. It takes you back to the Congo. Right. You go to your shops, right, and you like this chocolate that you want to buy for your woman, very expensive chocolate, right? Nicely packaged, appetizing to the eye. Then, but you must ask yourself, how is chocolate made, right? You know they use cocoa to make chocolate, but where is it from? It takes you back to where? To Cote d'Ivoire, which they call the Ivory Coast in Ghana,
Well,
right?
see, here's the messed up part, which they throw Americans off with. A
Mm,
lot of the chocolate in America comes from Denmark.
mm.
Where does Denmark get it from? See, we get it like third party from Europe, but a
Yeah,
lot of Americans don't realize it's already been extracted out of Africa into Europe or into
exactly.
Asia and then back over
Like
to us.
exactly. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, they account for almost 80% of cocoa supply, right? So America is, like you put it so well, it's getting a third party from Europe. It's the same thing. If you buy your
You know
woman
what?
flowers, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just
Yeah.
thought about this. When you brought up Ghana, it reminds me of we can't forget about the fact of where a lot of Europe's wealth came from in the first place. You guys know of a certain king. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah,
Yeah, out of a place called Timbuktu.
yeah, in Mali.
Yeah, where do you think that the Europeans got most of their gold from?
Hmm. And then and it goes back to what we discussed before we started here in terms of the naming conventions, how they name these places. Countries like Ghana, they call them the Gold Coast, right?
Exactly.
Cote d'Ivoire, they call it the Ivory Coast, right? And also, I was just talking about the floriculture industry, right? You've got lots of the flowers that ends up in your florist shops. You know, the biggest flower market in the world, it's in the Netherlands, right? That's where the biggest flower market is. And then from I think it's Royal Dutch Flora or something like that. From there, it gets distributed to all over the world. But if you do your research, you've got lots of flowers, cut flowers that are coming from Kenya, and that's Africa, yes. And then you've got the rest coming from South America. Absolutely nothing from Europe, right? So you look at platinum, which is used, in making lots of materials and products. Platinum is predominantly from South Africa, right? South Africa and Zimbabwe, they account for more than 50% of global platinum supply.
And the emeralds also.
Exactly. And then you've got Nigeria, it's got the oil. You've got Angola, it's got the oil. Uganda, they've got the bananas and everything there. You've got what you call it, Zambia, copper belt. They call it the copper belt. Again, the naming convention, the copper belt.
And let's not forget the diamonds in Sierra Leone.
Yes, diamonds in Sierra Leone. Naomi Campbell would know about that. Diamonds in Sierra Leone and in Botswana. So you've got diamonds there.
Which the De Beers family took over all of that and then, control the market on it. And
yes. And then you've got this, yes, the De Beers and the Anglo-Americans, the Oppenheimers, they run the show.
And listen to these names, De Beers, Oppenheimer. What do they all have in common? These are all from that same Nordic type area.
Yeah. So I mean, to go back to that. So without this whole supply chain, Africa is basically feeding the world, as it were. And it's very sad. It's even worse for us in Africa because now you've got they saw like it's very sad what these European companies do in Africa because when they extract the resources, they try to use as much cheap labor as they can, and where they can, they even use child labor. So it does.
One good thing, I guess, good or bad, I don't know how you slice it, about these damn colonizers is they equally spread the misery because they don't care if it's child labor in Africa, if it's in Asia, if it's child labor in Middle Eastern, they will take child labor where they can get it. And if they didn't have the laws that are in America, they would still be pushing child labor here too.
Yeah, that's what they do for them. All they want is to get the product at the lowest cost possible. So if there's black children here that can work our minds, then bring them in. It's all heat and I mean, unless if you're someone like us and you really try to look deeper into these things, then you'll realize that it's the way that Africans are being treated in their own territories, and we've got governments that are allowing that because they're proxy to all this that's happening. They get paid, they get rewarded for keeping quiet and making sure that you do not disturb the European in extracting value from African resources. And then some of these items, they get resold back to us at a very, very high price. And then you must ask yourself then, with all these resources and raw materials, why is Africa not processing these raw materials? Why are they not being processed in Africa and then we export to the world? Because we're now importing at a very, very expensive price. Products that naturally came from Africa, right? And also now you have to look at the intra-Africa trade. It's very, very difficult for African countries to trade amongst each other. So
and that's because of these embargoes set up by all of these European nations.
Yes, and the logistics infrastructure also, the way that the Europeans created the logistics infrastructure in Africa, it was created in a way that will enable the movement of those resources from Africa to the ports, right? So that it eventually gets shipped to Europe. So you find the best of logistics infrastructure, the best, the most strategic logistics infrastructure in Africa. It comes from the source of the raw material into the port, right? Then it goes to Europe. So it's rare, it's very rare that you will find a good logistics network that's very pan-African in its creation, where you're saying you're developing a route between South Africa and Nigeria because we're pushing for trade between the two countries. It's rare. You will not find that. In most cases, it ends up being cheaper. If you're in Nigeria to receive an item from South Africa, that item might have to go via Europe, and then you get it coming from that side, right? So it's also in the infrastructure, the racism that we spoke about earlier. It's infused in everything. Nothing is supposed to benefit the African. Nothing is supposed to enable the Africans to be able to communicate and interact with each other.
Yeah.
We're getting the final product from Europe, from the USA. The USA, I think in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, they created something that's called, what's the acronym? It's AGOA, that's the acronym. But basically, this was about the trade between Africa and the USA, right? Where they drop the tariffs and customs duties to enable trade and so forth. But if you dig deeper into that, so for example, in South Africa, we've got platinum, we've got steel that gets, shipped to the USA, and the USA is now paying very minimal, like the tariffs, they favor the USA. But even in SA, the countries that are responsible, that really control that extraction industry, it's white-owned businesses, right? So it's not your average black person that's benefiting from that economic block or agreement. It's still the white person. The black person is still
and if you're a black person who is going to benefit from it, you have to almost agree to propping up this system. It's just like what you brought up with Trevor Noah. It's something that we see commonly, unless it's entertainment industry, and even in the entertainment industry, you gotta kind of sell out to a degree, because it's a reason why you don't see tons of different black people in these roles, instead of seeing the same old black people over and over and over. Why certain albums only get pushed and promoted, because they know you're already willing to play ball.
It's I think it's the creation of this, what you call it, Hollywood, that Hollywood culture. I always say
we can go. Ooh, you know what? We're going. I'm saying this right now, and I hope you all out there are enjoying this conversation, because I definitely am. We are definitely going to have a part 2 to this.
Definitely.
There's so many more topics that we have to get to. Let's see, what did I wanted to add? Yes. So as far as the relationship with Africa and Russia, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because the West is always trying to, like we've already talked about, the West is always trying to make Russia look like the bad guy, when what we've all already talked about very clearly is the West has been the bad guy to Africa. And so, but what has Russia been to Africa?
Right. Russia has been a good friend, and Russia has been a great ally to Africa. One can check all the pages of history. There's absolutely no point in history where Russia was, in conflict with Africa. Russia has never sought to colonize Africa. If anything that happened is the West has got a problem with Russia, is that if it wasn't for Russia and China, then I don't think any African state would even be enjoying what we call the civil liberties. I'm not even talking about independence because that's a fallacy. It does not exist.
Yeah.
It's still very much dependent on the Western.
Well, it's the same thing with like Cuba. They wouldn't exist if it wouldn't have been for Russia. That's the reason why you have so many Cubanos who name their children Russian names. But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, well, I mean, same here. We've got lots of people that with Russian names and so forth. It's because Russia was very, very vital in the war of liberation, right? So obviously, at some stage, African countries decided that the only way to reclaim power is its ways to wage a direct war with the Europeans, and now Africa did not have the advanced military warfare. You've got military history, so it's familiar territory to you. So we did not have any military warfare. So now Africa had to seek partnerships and allies, and Russia and China were willing to assist. So most of the especially in Southern Africa, most of the countries that got their independence in courts, it was through assistance from Russia. They trained the black people. They supplied us with military weapons. They trained our people in intelligence, military intelligence. I've seen an image on the internet of actually Vladimir Putin. I think he was in Tanzania also with some of during the War of Liberation. He was in the trenches there with them. So it's been a very good relationship. And what I like about Russia the most, over and above, even after the end of the direct military confrontation between Africans and the West, is that Russia did not then seek to become the colonizer, right? To say we have helped you here, then now it's our turn to loot. It's our turn. You must now bow down to us. Russia did not do that. If any, Russia did not even get any payments from any African country that it assisted with war for all the assistance.
That blew my mind when I read that part in your article about up to modern day with Putin. You said that Putin forgave a lot of the debts which African nations had from the Soviet era, and I'm like, a European nation forgiving debts? What the heck? I mean, Europe doesn't. I mean, think about. I mean, in the U.S., you can sit there and you have a multi-billion-dollar company, and if I owe them 35 cents, they're gonna spend far more money having people call me all day long to remind me about that 35 cents and when I'm gonna pay that 35 cents, than it's even worth. And so to hear that Putin, the bad guy of the world, forgave debts, and is helping, Africans, that sounds a little, crazy to some people.
Yeah, and also, I mean, obviously, with this whole now Ukraine situation that's happening there, obviously, a vote had to be done by the UN to try and justify the invasion of Ukraine, obviously by the West and NATO. And you will note the voting patterns when it came to African countries. Yes, these countries that voted yes, to try and give the green lights to the invasion. But there's a couple of other African countries that, abstained from the vote, said, no, we're abstaining from this, we're not voting. Then there's, I think, a few that definitely came out, said, no, we're not voting for this, right? So, and for me, and there's the metrics to it that I like, right now, where I think China is the biggest equalizer also now in this, in how Africa is conducting itself towards the West, how its attitude towards the West. Because first things first, the West still runs the show in Africa. Yeah. Remember, they
still run the show everywhere. I mean, even in China, whether they'll acknowledge it or not.
And they use the Bretton Woods institutions, like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, to put countries into debt. So when you take a loan from IMF, you kind of give up your sovereignty. So they're gonna blackmail you for life. They're gonna make sure that you remain in debt.
I don't know if you watch it or not. Are familiar with Game of Thrones. But in Game of Thrones, you have the seven kingdoms, and what you find out is the seven kingdoms are all beholden to one nation, basically. And that one nation, it's because they hold what's called the Iron Bank. The Iron Bank is more dominant and powerful than any of the nations, any of the kings, all that stuff. And that's the reality that we still live in, that the banks, which are mostly European controlled, still control everything. Riddle Me brought up a couple of good comments. Says Ghana's second largest exporter has banned raw cocoa export and will only be exporting refined chocolate. That's good. That's a good thing. It's a lot healthier. Also, Riddle Me says Russia and Cuba put feet on the ground in Africa to help Africans in their quest for independence. Ooh, could you expand on that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm glad you added Cuba there because there's many people here that just do not understand why African countries continue to assist Cuba where they can. Where Cuba, remember, Cuba has been hit by sanctions by the USA for the longest time
Since the
so
50s.
yeah, so now and again, where cooperation is required, African countries, they're very much aware, right? In as much as they're controlled by Europe, but they're very much aware of the historical ties between Cuba and Africa. Even in the medical industry, I'm actually doing an article on that, where Cuba, even up to now, it does a good job. Where if we've got crises like medical crises, they send their doctors into different African countries. They send through their engineers to help, and it's because of those historical ties. And with Cuba, there's a country like in Angola, where there was a war where the USA was backing the rebels that side. If it wasn't for Cuba, the USA, I think that's why the USA is still pissed off at Cuba today, because Cuba literally sent its army to Angola to fight the USA, and the USA was fighting side by side with apartheid South Africa, the South African army. And then we had obviously the other African frontline armies that were helped by Cuba, that fought the war with Cuba. And that's how Angola got to a point where it got its independence in courts. If it wasn't for Cuba, and then, yeah, that wasn't going to happen. And Angola is not the only country. Like I said, it's many other African countries where Cuba really left a very positive footprint. And this is what still drives cooperation between Cuba and different African countries. And it saddens me to see many Black people when they see that the government of South Africa they sent some aid to Cuba, and then they start complaining, we've got our own problems here. Why are they sending money to Cuba? But they never complain about Europe extracting value from here. It's because of the historical ties. If it wasn't for Cuba and it wasn't for Russia and for China also, then as Black people, we wouldn't even be recognized as human beings in Africa. Remember when we fought the European, first you're fighting to be recognized as a human being before you even talk about your freedom and independence, because they never considered us human enough to govern and determine our own affairs. So
yeah, well, that's what was it, Brown's Rebellion. That's what he brought up. And welcome in. Glad to see you. And anybody else that I missed, apologies if I missed you. The remnant effects of the doctrine of discovery, the main Christian doctrine, are still at play in the world today. That's the reason why you'll still see in certain parts of Africa where where they're holding up this white Mary through the streets. The disconnect that's going on there. But it's very undersold what the whole racist aspect of a lot, and that's what I try to tell people as I focus a lot on foreign policy and a lot of these different issues. It's very similar to what's going on in the US in many of these countries. The only difference is understanding the languages, and maybe different things are happening at different severity levels. Uh, this may be worse in the US, or it may be worse in South Africa, and it's just, or certain things happen at different times. But all of it's similar because we got to remember we're dealing with the same oppressors, and they run the same playbook on everybody. And so, due to the different size of an area, or maybe the power a nation has at the time, depends on how they're able to enact their strategies. Would you agree?
Definitely, I agree. The constant here, it's always the same racist people that are really causing damage to Africa. And I mean, like you mentioned earlier, mentioned something about Davos. That was where they have their main meetings that side, the World Economic Forum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they have developed this strategy of grooming future political leaders. So in Canada, was this guy, this Canadian president, what's his name, Justin? Um,
Justin Trudeau.
yeah, he was groomed by the World Economic Forum. Where we've got a couple of people here in SA now. There's one guy that's being being propped up to be the next deputy president, right? He's there, he's involved with the World Economic Forum. They're grooming him. So they say they've got this strategy where they identify future leaders, and these are the people that they will groom into positions of influence all
Well,
over the world.
well, yeah, literally. I mean, every country you can go into, this Nicolas Sarkozy. I'm getting tongue tied right now.
Yeah,
But the
French.
French Prime Minister. I mean, Angela Merkel. She was a part of it. What's her name? Jacinda. Drawing a blank on her name, out of Australia and New Zealand. I mean, all of those people. Jagmeet Singh. That's another one. Thank you, Hamza. Charlie Brown says, and I'll get to your question real quick, Yipper, says there's a profound distinction between Christ's teachings and the entity of Christendom. Well, there's a distinct, I won't go off into my tangent on religion, but I feel most of the world completely misunderstands the Bible in the first place. And many people are arguing from a misunderstanding, which has been put out basically from the Eurocentric Christianity. And even, it doesn't matter if it's Black church, African church, Latino church, they're all, for the most part, still accepting a lot of the doctrine, which is basically loose Catholicism, which is nonsense. Yipper's question is, what is Russia and China's involvement with Libya?
I'm assuming that's Libya that is being referred to here.
Yes, that's what I'm pretty sure they're saying Libya.
Well, at this stage, there's no Libya left, really. I mean, when they took out Muammar Gaddafi, there's no Libya left, and thanks to the USA, right?
Yes, go, yeah, because we started a little bit into that. So yeah, could you elaborate, because I was talking about the other day, I think you commented on when I was talking about some of why they decided to go after Gaddafi, and why they went after Assad, and why they're going after a lot of these people in that area, in general, what that has to do with Africa as a whole. I got another comment that I'll say after, but I'll hold it because it's a little bit, it's kind of close but separate. But yeah, I mean, your thoughts first.
Yeah. So I think the video that you shared earlier of that European giving us a lecture on what Europe is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that video and you study Colonel Gaddafi, you realize that what he was trying to do was definitely at loggerheads with the ambitions of Europe. He was definitely getting into territory that Europe doesn't really like, and they had to use force to get him out. If he wanted to create a common currency between African countries, that's what we need. and to the extent of creating a united Africa, one Africa.
Yeah.
The same thing that you have in the USA, where you've got different states, federal states, but at the end of the day, you one national government, if I may put it that way. You are a republic. It's the same thing that Gaddafi was pushing for, that we've got an African currency, single currency is African, that's not backed by anything that's got to do with the USA. He wanted to create a united Africa. That was the main reason why they had to take him out, because now this was definitely encroaching into their economic system, right? That they've done so much or to create in Africa, where they continue to benefit, where without the USA, without the West, Africa cannot exist. So that's the main reason why they had to take out Gaddafi, because now at that stage, it was getting to a point where the idea of a united Africa was becoming more appealing to everyone. And I mean, obviously now we had China, Russia, and India, and Brazil also coming into the fray with the BRICS. I can guarantee you, if Colonel Gaddafi was still alive to see his dream to an end, BRICS will be the most powerful economic bloc right now, and he had to be stopped.
Yeah, and it would have already led it, because see, what a lot of people don't think about or connect is the only thing that's really holding the U.S. up is the petrodollar. Once the petrodollar collapses, America collapses. When America collapses, so does the white supremacy, which goes throughout the countries. Because people ask, well, how can roughly 8 to 10% of white people keep power in South Africa? Because they're being backed by other white nations. That's why.
Yeah.
How can the Israelis have the power in basically what is a connection of the East and Africa? How could they have that staple point? Because a lot of people don't realize that they were trying to get a peacekeeper status in the African Union. Which that's a whole other. We're gonna have to talk about that next time, but because that gets into a lot of different stuff. But the fact that they're trying to do that, if the African Union was able to succeed, everything that they've been doing in Israel would be reversed. Just like what happened in South Africa, they would be getting pushed out of the area, and just like you would start to see a rise of Africa and many African nations, along with a rise of China, along with the rise of Russia, along with the rise of India, along with the rise of so many other nations, because the U.S. will no longer have its boot on everybody's neck anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. Talking about the African Union, I just have something here. I think I'm just going to read it out.
Sure, go ahead.
Where do I have it?
And correct Riddle Me says, not just grooming these young leaders, but they're protected from scandals and hyped up by mainstream media. Ronald Lamola in South Africa.
Yeah, so Ronald Lamola is the Minister of Justice. Yeah, so you would know.
Or injustice.
Exactly. I was going to say that he's the Minister of Injustice, and he's a student of the World Economic Forum. That's the same guy who's being propped up to become the next deputy president of the ANC, because to a larger degree, the ANC is a European or Western creation. It was infiltrated. Yes, it was started by these people with good intentions. Like any political or revolutionary movement, there's people who join with good intentions based on their understanding of the prevailing material conditions at the time. But then to a greater extent, it's influenced. So now, because the European, now what they do, they're very good with succession planning, very good at that. So they're not propping him up to be the next president, because then it's going to raise eyebrows that, this young guy now all of a sudden, like, he's now supposed to be our president. What they do is, they're going to say he's going to be the deputy president. Already they know that within the ANC, they have developed a culture of saying whoever is deputy president, 90% chances are is going to become the next president. So that's what they do. It's going to be an exception with Trevor Noah when they make him president, right?
That's scary to think about.
Yeah,
Man,
because
I didn't
now
even think about that reality,
yeah,
possibly that's what they're doing.
that's what they're doing. Because now in South Africa, it's getting to a point where even with the ANC now, they're saying the system basically saying it does not want the ANC to have majority control of the body politic, as it were. So now what they're doing is they're talking about a coalition government, right? Where it's difficult to make decisions. You know how coalitions work.
Oh yeah,
So
it's just like the problems that they have in the UK all the time.
yeah, exactly. So that's what happens. And now the sad part for me, I always look beyond the political party. I look at who is funding these political
The
parties.
same here.
Yeah, and they all have the similar funders, the open hammers. They're the biggest organization of families donating to these political parties. And then now you're going to say you're having a coalition government of different political outfits or entities. Meanwhile, you've got a single government run by one or two, three, four white families, right? Because
Well, it's the same thing with Europe.
yeah, they do not donate and then just sit back. There has to be a return on investment.
Because I ask people, I say, well, tell me who actually owns the Federal Reserve? Who actually owns the IMF? Who owns these? Now, they can tell us who owns the Bank of East Asia. That's the Lee family. They'll tell us that, who go all the way back to the Tang Dynasty. They'll let us know about the, I'm trying to remember, the Sharif family out of Pakistan. They'll let us know those things. But they, once it comes to Europe, it gets real murky who's in control of anything. Hamza says, I want to push back a little. Hamza says, but China and Russia were happy too when Gaddafi died. Incorrect. They would far prefer a stronger Africa because a stronger Africa gives threat to the West. And they believe that they can do business with a stronger Africa and not be under the foothold. So, do I think that they want to see Africa, jump ahead of them? No, I don't. Don't get me wrong. But I think they would prefer to see a strong Africa than a strong West. India and U.S. they're sort of friends. Remember we talked about business and trade. This isn't about buddies and friends. This is what's in the best interest of your country at the time. So India is doing business with the U.S. to an extent. But the one thing you'll notice is India has still been sending aid to Russia. India has not decided to jump on the bandwagon with NATO and all that. And if you notice, even Turkey, who is an ally to the U.S., is pushing back on NATO even, and pushing back on like Finland and Sweden joining NATO. So it's a little bit more messy than most people realize.
Yeah, I mean, I think the USA now is gone as far as toppling the Pakistani government, the president. They've taken him out, and it's got to do with this whole Ukraine thing that's happening. So that's the only language that the USA understands.
Well, the main reason why another reason why they're so concerned with Ukraine, it always goes back to oil. Oil is a big part of it, and grain and things like that. So out of Europe, Ukraine and Russia are the largest producers of grain, and they pump grain all over the whole entire world. And so the rest of Europe doesn't produce anything, literally doesn't produce anything. They import raw materials and then build products, like Gugulethu was saying. When you bring in steels and metals and all that, and then you build your Mercedes and BMWs and then ship them back out, that's because you had to get these raw materials out of Africa for the most part. Am I wrong, Gugulethu?
No, you're correct. You're very correct in that. That I mean, Europe does not really, and I do not understand why Europe is kind of like taking. I mean, historically, of course, Europe has got a good ties with the USA. I mean, they're all the same genes anyway. But now Europe is the one that's suffering the most from this whole.
Well, they got to that they're really, because see, this is what a lot of people miss, because I lived in Europe for a while. When I was in the military days, I lived in Italy for 2 years and Spain for a year. What happens is, even though, for instance, like oil, a lot of countries in Europe get their oil from Russia, or they get it from like Libya or in places like that over there. So those places have ties to Russia. And so when the US puts these clenches on them, they get in trouble on the oil side. But if they want to get the rest of the goods and stuff, which they get, which the US gets out of China for cheap and then sends back over to Europe, they can't get that. And also, they worry about the U.S. Possibly saying, oh, okay, well, we'll just take our corporations and move this corporation out and won't do business with you there. So they're in a catch-22. If they go against the U.S., they're going to lose. And if they go too much with Russia, then they're worried about getting the consequences, because they know what the U.S. does to anybody that goes against them.
Mm. So that's the problem with European Union. But I mean, it's even for us in Africa this side. Of course, we do feel the impacts, like you've said. In as much as we've got Arab land and we've got all the what is Rico saying there? Read for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
U.S. Congress wants a plan to counter Russia in Africa, and members have 90 days to come up with a plan to neutralize Russia's influence and gain control of strategic resources. That's colonization. I mean, this whole thing, I don't know if you guys played the game Risk as a kid. This is what this is. You have one on one side, one on the other side. One is trying to, push and take control. And so what happens is, so the other one doesn't get dominated, they need to start building up partnerships with these other people out of defense. And so Russia would be perfectly fine with just doing what Russia needs to do, doing a little bit of business. But they notice that the U.S. is literally walking around like a plague, like a virus, trying to gobble up everything. It doesn't take a genius to realize it's only a matter of time before they come for me too. And if you guys know a little bit about Russian history, we have interfered with so many of their elections. We have put in, we have literally propped up American-backed leaders in Russia already, Boris Yeltsin, to name one of them. So they know what happens when the U.S. gets their way in power. So to push back, they got to have an exit strategy. So what they do is they go and reach out to all the people who the U.S. is wrong and do fair, decent business with them, i.e. partners like China, i.e. partners in Africa, i.e. partners in the Caribbean, and in South America also. And that's the way that they push back. And the U.S. is realizing, oh, crap, we got to do something fast.
Mm. And talking about Russia, for example, here in South Africa, when Jacob Zuma was still president, there was a nuclear deal between Russia and SA that obviously, since we're a constitutional democracy, it was deemed illegal, which was Russia was going to assist in building a nuclear power station in South Africa, which was going to address lots of energy issues, not only in SA, but all over Africa. But they saw to it that this deal does not go through because it involves Russia. Now we are at a stage where South Africa has got good percentages of coal deposits. Most of the energy we get is generated from coal power plants, right? And one thing that most people do not realize is that, the energy factor when it comes to economics, it does not only start and end with putting the lights on. It's a security issue. If you do not control your energy supply, then you are at a higher risk of getting toppled or colonized or dominated. So now what they're doing now, Europe, the West, and the USA again, with this government that we have currently, is they want to privatize ESCOM, which is the national power utility, state-owned company that basically generates and supplies electricity not only to South Africa, to many other African countries, right? They want to privatize energy provision in South Africa. So when you privatize energy provision, you basically taking ownership of the country, because then energy now becomes like, at any time when the interests of the West are not served, because they control the keys, they can turn off the lights and
That's why they always try to move everything to capitalism
yeah.
versus any kind of social government, whether that be socialism, communism, democratic socialism, whatever different types of all the way down to like a smaller form like Epicureanism. If there's anything that's collective, the U.S. can't benefit the way they like to, so they have to go against those systems. I remember you had some questions, because I see Riddle Me is in here, so we got to make sure that we get to Riddle Me's question about what was it specifically about the Rittenhouse stuff. What's some of your because I know you probably had a couple of questions, and I know somebody was asking about the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. I guess I'll give a quick my quick thought on that, and if you got some thoughts you'd like to add on, sure, go ahead. And then if you have any questions, because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you say you got a flight that you have to get to, but as far as the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, the American media made this into a racial dynamic in a weird way. Let me explain. Kyle Rittenhouse was a white guy who shot mostly white people. Well, shot 3 white people. Just because the rally was supposed to be, the protest was initially for Black Lives Matter, it turned into something else. It turned into, people running around and busting windows and doing all that. And I really don't care either way. But if you try to grab somebody's gun, you got to understand that they are going to try to shoot you. So that needs to be in your calculus. If you're okay with taking that gamble, okay, fine. But if you get shot in the process, that's on you also. Do I feel the kid should have ever been there in the first place? No. But that leans towards that white privilege mentality of, I need to go and turn myself into a cop on the streets. For one, you should have never been there. For two, what authority do you have to just randomly pick up a gun and go out there? Police officers saw this kid walking around with a gun. He shouldn't have been out there, period. If they're going to be against, vigilante justice, then you got to be consistent and tell people to take their asses home and not allow them to come and assist like they're an actual authority when they have no authority. So, do I feel his shooting of white people was racially motivated? No. And it's not I don't feel like it really correlates well with the stuff in the KCN. But do I feel it epitomizes some of the white supremacy thinking that leads into some of the stuff that happened during the KZN? Yes. Still in that same ballpark of thinking. Yipper, somebody, he can get another flight stay. Don't worry, I guarantee you, I will have him back. I'll have Carl Zah on next week. But if Gugulethu can come back the week after, then hey, he's more than welcome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's perfect. I think we can always do another one. I can spare another, maybe, let's say, another 30 minutes. Don't worry, Ricky.
Oh, perfect, perfect. And we can hit some more good points then.
Yeah. I can spare another 30 minutes. Ricky will pay for my flight anyway. So
That's good.
that's it. So I think from my side, unless if there is any question that pops up, then we'll take it as it comes. But for me, I wanted to find out from you.
Sure.
Where
I
was
agree,
it?
Hamza.
Wait, foundational Black American movement. What is it all about? What's the philosophy? Is it justified? I know the biggest man, the face of it, it's Tariq, right? It's Tariq, that's his name. He's very big on that movement. Like what's the philosophy driving it?
You talking about like a Tariq Nasheed?
Yeah.
See the mentality. I feel it's kind of more. It's hollow in a sense because a lot of the stuff is about seeking change um in a very vain way. It's not getting to the root of a lot of the actual causes. It's just doing things on the surface. I mean, it's the same thing as for instance, after you come back from war and you have an issue, they call it PTSD now, post traumatic stress disorder. Well, back in the day, it was just called shell shock.
Yeah.
You know, it's sanitizing language. It's changing up a couple of things on the edges here and there. I mean, look into like the wanting to take down of statues in America. Well, you're going to have people who are like, well, we don't need to take down all of the history. Well, you go throughout Europe. Are there statues of everybody? No. And once you find out when they do horrible shit, they normally take down those statues. But in America, Americans feel like, well, this is history, so it needs to be kept up. Stuff like, for instance, to my brethren who are in, the Dakotas, and they got to look at the faces of 4 genocidal tyrants who took and stole their lands, faces up on the wall. Then they got to look down, pull out their wallet, and look at the faces of those same colonizers on the money. That right there is a tyranny in itself. And I feel like a lot of the white populace in America, if they could come to at least a halfway point and acknowledge the traumas that they've done, you know how many Black people would forgive that alone? They're perfectly fine with saying, hey, well, just admit you fucked up and we can move past it. Me, I'm not as forgiving. But that's where a lot of them are. And I feel like where you have this separation is especially in the Generation X group. Many of them have gotten their house, gotten their car, married whoever, their high school sweetheart and all this, and they've had their kids, and their kids are going through college now. And they have a decent life, and they're seeing some of the only problem is dealing with racial equality, and that's basically more on the being treated better, because there's no actual real equality when you look at the wealth gap between Blacks and whites. It's astronomical and only growing more and more and more by the minute. So they don't get some of this stuff. Is just, it's a lot of talk that goes nowhere.
Yeah, I agree. Because I remember, I think a couple of months back, there was a Twitter space. I think it went on for like 2-3 days. It was
Yes.
Tariq, one of Tariq's Twitter spaces, and I think the reason why it got a big reach here in Africa is because the brother was literally fingering Africans that reside in the USA. So obviously, and he seemed to have a problem with Africans going to the USA, and his argument was that when Africans get to the USA, they occupy spaces that are meant for Black Americans.
Well, you do have a degree of that. Like you have, for instance, you take the movie Harriet that just came out not that long ago. You take a couple of the different what is it the Judas or whatever, I can't remember, but it's talking about Fred Hampton. What you're starting to see is instead of having a Black American even play these roles, even in Hollywood, we're not even having Black Americans portray the roles. They're having Africans or British Africans come in and play the roles of Black Africans. And it's like also you have that, or some do acknowledge and give respect back to the Black community, but then you have some who they literally just rise up above the Black Americans here, and some literally have a hateful mentality of the way they look at Black Americans. And so there is that division which you have here between some Africans who come into America and Black Americans, because I've heard this from one of my Nigerian friends that he looks at most Black Americans as lazy and ungrateful, and you should just be basically appreciative of it's better than what I get in my country, and that's kind of the mentality. And so it's a very negative opinion that some Africans come in with towards African Americans or Black Americans.
Yeah, and I think it happens with even in within African countries where the immigrant communities they like you said, there is certain people that will look down upon their host nation. In much of in almost like way, right? But the thing with me is, for me, that's the
Kayani, I hope I'm saying that correctly. They say the same about Black South Africans. So, Black South Africans are kind of getting the same treatment which the Black Americans are getting, also from different African groups.
Yes, that's what I was referring to. That you get that with immigrant communities where they start looking down upon the host nation. But for me, like the foundation for it all is let's start, because the similarities are there between the USA and Africa, or South Africa as each way, is that in as much
it sounds like more South African and maybe West Africans have more of a similarity, whereas when you start getting more to that Central African or East African is where I find more of the rub comes.
Yeah. So, but then the thing now is, for me, like if I move to the USA, and I'm speaking from a position of a person that has never been to the United States of America, right? Pending my visa from you, but I'm not vaccinated, so I don't know if I'll make it through to the USA.
It's the same here. I'm not getting vaccinated either, and we could have a talk about that. We'll talk about that off camera.
Yeah. So the thing is, in the USA, the system is designed to disadvantage the Black American. That's basically that's the foundation of the system. And now, if I go to the USA, right, and end up occupying a position or a post that Tariq feels like this position is better suited for a Black American, and then suddenly I become Tariq's enemy, right?
Yeah.
But then now I look at it, between me and Tariq, we're both Black people. We both have a system that's designed to disadvantage us. If there's any chances of forging ties and unity, it will be between me and Tariq, not between me and Joe Biden, because I'm Black.
Well, what they don't get there is that the only reason why the Black African is getting that is it's kind of by a slipping through the crack, in a sense. They set up a law to make it easier for immigrants all immigrants. But where I don't think that they ever thought about is the fact of, oh, wait a minute, what if black immigrants come in there? And so black immigrants are able to take advantage of these benefits unintentionally, because I guarantee you, if they would have thought of this, they would have made sure that they put a little asterisk in there. If you're coming from African nations, you don't get these benefits.
Yeah.
But through that, yes, it does create some of that division.
Yeah, and also, I mean, for most African people, that I can guarantee you, because obviously most people watch the movies and all that entertainment stuff. Black people in Africa, they kind of like look up to Black Americans. They idolize Black Americans a lot. There's cultures that now develop, mini cultures within cultures, where you've got Black people in Africa kind of like mimicking the Black American lifestyle that we see in the movies and on TV. The Black American is very, very much idolized in this in Africa. And also the thing is, with the movies, they do not really show the true conditions of Black Americans, right? They don't show that. They don't show the conditions of a random Black American that's living in the streets of Los Angeles. We don't see much of that unless if you really try to dig into it. The image that we get of Black Americans, it's of people that are very successful. They run businesses. They're very confident people. They've got so much influence. That's the image that we get this side. And like I said, if I can guarantee you 90%, if not 99% of the people that you might interview anywhere in Africa about their views about Black Americans, I can guarantee you it's all positive stuff, and everyone wants to go to America and live this American life that we see on TV. So
that's funny to me, especially how I grew up.
Yeah. So it shocks me that, some African people eventually, when they get to the US, and especially the ones that then start kind of like looking down upon the Black Americans, it's not a good thing. It needs to be condemned, if any, because at the end of the day, we're fighting the same system. The very fact that someone left their country, be it Nigeria, and went to the USA in search of greener pastures. If the white system had not destroyed Nigeria or any African country, I would have less reasons for going to the USA. I could go there for vacation, but not to try and start a new life, because where I am, I'm supposed to be, especially in Africa, where we've got all the resources. We should be having actually Black Americans moving into Africa, right? Connecting with their roots, because it's home, and home is best, and it's happening.
Well, and also you feel like, no matter which other nations we go to, we still get the racism, we still get all of this, and we still get all of these problems. And so might as well try, might as well try it in Africa and see if, it can be a little bit better. The American dream, exactly. I don't know if you guys have heard this phrase. It said they call it the American dream because you got to be dreaming to believe in it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That we idolize the Black American. I was seeing on Twitter, there's some guys fighting over Kendrick Lamar. Someone said no, his latest album, it's nonsense, and then another one was, it's because like everyone is looking forward, right, to that. It's because of the way that we kind of like have been designed to look forward to anything that comes from Black America. And if you flip the coin, I doubt if anyone, I mean, you've got lots of Black Americans that up to today, they do not know that Africa is not a country to start with.
Yeah.
Right. They make some very, very ridiculous claims about their view of Africa. Also, it's
Well,
of
one thing about the education system here in America is it's not equal. So you're going to have some people, some Black Americans, which have a pretty good education. Then you're going to have some where it's embarrassing how bad it is and how little they know. I mean, you have some Black Americans who they've lived it for 50, 60 years in one place, have never traveled more than 30 miles from where they live. And they might live in some small country town and make about, minimum wage. And that's all they've ever, stayed deep poverty. I mean, some who don't even have internet in their areas. And I mean, that's some parts of America are as impoverished as any third world country. I mean, myself personally, I grew up to a single mom in a very low income area. I remember my mom losing jobs and us getting evicted and things like that. I remember plenty of my friends being on food stamps back in the day when they had food stamps before they had the card. I've had, winters where we didn't have power at certain times where we were using the stove because we still had gas, the stove to be able to keep the house warm and doing homework by candlelight. And, and luckily for other family members that was able to help prop things up. I mean, before I graduated high school, I mean, I probably easily had 10 friends die of gun violence. I mean, and so military was an escape to only way you can have some kind of education. And then it's kind of funny now where I have many people who will beat up on people who join the military. And it's like, do you realize most of the people who I grew up with have no concepts of anything good or bad that the military is doing? They don't have any concept of the military is exploiting people in Afghanistan. They don't know any of this stuff. It's just like, hey, they're throwing out some money so I can go to college, and they tell me I'm going to be able to travel some places. And that's as far as it goes for many people. You know how many people I know of that I grew up with that couldn't even tell you who their damn mayor is in their own city? I mean, they don't, I mean, and then you have some where, I have a very educated family, even though we weren't wealthy, my grandmother made it to 8th grade. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 2nd grade. And I'm talking about on my mom's side. And they were sharecroppers, which is one step basically from slavery. They grew up in the aftermath of the Tulsa massacre. Their parents lived through it. Watching all the racism that they grew up facing and the poverty, of going through the Depression. and I mean, and then watching Black people getting hung right and left and all that. And then for them to have, I'd say out of their 8 kids, 5 out of 8 of them having college degrees and leading their kids on. Funny, Hamza and Yipper bring up Nation of Islam. One of our worst areas where I used to live, if you drove through that area and you're white, the police would stop you, not because you did anything wrong, but they'd stop you to escort you out until you don't stop at any of the lights. Because at that time back in the 90s, somebody's just going to run up, shoot you in the head, and yank you out of your car. And that was normal. What was going on? They took that community and turned that into probably one of the lowest crime rate areas in the whole entire city. And so I don't know if people realize that Kansas City still stays in like the top 25 most violent cities in the US. And that violent part in every one of these cities is always the predominantly Black part. So when they show these Black entrepreneurs doing well and all that, many of them had this similar background and just were able to find ways to get out of it, maybe grant programs, maybe scholarships, maybe they went to college and then, got out of that community. But this is, my experience is very normal. Getting harassed by the cops and all that, that's normal for most Black Americans.
Yeah, but it feels like with the system, I think across the world for all Black people, like
Yeah, it's the
you
same. Yeah.
it's the same. The treatment is totally the same. The cops and everything, you by just being Black, you already being treated as a suspect, right?
Always, always.
You always it's the same everywhere. That's
And even when you start doing well,
yeah.
that's more of an instance that you're going to be pulled over by police. I mean, still to this day in Kansas City, if you have, like, say, Wyandotte County tags, where I grew up and where predominantly the Black people in Kansas City, Kansas are, if you drive into Johnson County, you're more than likely going to get pulled over, especially if it's after dark.
And that I feel like also even the Black entrepreneurs, be it in the USA or anywhere else in Africa, where for as long as you're a Black person, you can get out of the situation, as it were. But I think the system is so designed that yes, there is gaps for you to get away. But what you are not going to do is you are not going to contribute to the rest of the people that you left behind your community to improve it so that everyone gets out of that, because then that's totally going against the system. And
Yeah.
the moment you try starting to uplift Black people, then they start coming for you, and
Well,
they
perfect
definitely
example, Nipsey Hussle, which
yeah.
happened out here in LA,
Yeah.
when he started trying to do more stuff for the community. That's when all of a sudden, there's this beef that comes out of nowhere, because what they do is, it's just like they did with Malcolm X. They will get people inside of the organization to hate you for some other reason. And then, though it might not be the white man pulling the trigger, the white man got this person to do their bidding.
And what's your take about Martin Luther King? Do you think the speech, that famous speech that he made at Riverside Church, was talking about Vietnam, the Vietnam War? Do you think at that stage the system then decided that, because it was shortly after that speech, really, that they kind of like
You're
smoked him
talking
out?
about the mountaintop speech.
Yeah.
So, see, in America, that's not that famous of a speech. And I'll tell you why. Because of what he's talking about in that speech, they don't like to talk about it. They want to stick with "I have a dream."
Oh.
Because the "I have a dream" speech is about inclusion. Of late, one of his quotes started getting more attention and more esteem when he talks about that. I feel like I've led my people into a burning building. Because all we ended up getting was, now you don't have to sit in the back of the bus. Now you can go into the front of a restaurant. Now you have so-called inclusion. But did that happen as far as on the wealth? Did that happen when you get paid? Like, I mean, I knew of one job that I work at. I had military experience. I have, I didn't finish my degrees, but I have college education. I had managerial experience. And then there's a white kid who can come in right off the street with a high school diploma and make $4 or $5 an hour more than me. That's common here, because you're not valued the same.
Yeah,
You're normally last hired, first fired. Like, you go to many companies and they got 1 or 2 Black people there. That's so that they meet these diversity quotas only. If they did not have to hire any Black people, they wouldn't. And the same thing with brown people in some of these areas. The mountaintop speech, he was hitting on the fact of the economic issues that we're facing. He was hitting on that we need to start hitting them back and fighting them in their pockets. And that's how you fight them. All this marching around, that ain't getting you anywhere. If you start hitting these corporations back by boycotting their products, by only buying within the Black community, by building up your own community first and foremost, and then you can go and help somebody else. Clean your own house first before you worry about cleaning somebody else's house. The Black community still to this day does not do that. And that's what happens with stuff like Black Lives Matter. all these organizations, which they have their causes, all glom on to Black causes. And then next thing you know, we're fighting the issue for these other people first and foremost, and nothing is being done with the Black community. So they'll have these, well, let's have a Black and Jewish and Asian committee. And then what we do is we go out there and then we fight for, you know, a decrease in you know, hatred towards Jewish people, and we fight for it better improve for Asian communities, and then nothing happens for the Black community. And that's what always happens over and over and over.
Yes, and it's the case everywhere. I mean, even here, if I occupy the same position as a white person, he's gonna be earning more than me. Even though we're doing the same roles, everything, the person is going to be earning the same because he is white. So it's that whole system. It goes across board. But then also talking about Black people and how we do not support each other. You see it it's almost like it's ingrained in our ways of thinking, but obviously it's mental colonization where we have been designed to treat the white man with trust and the Black man with suspicion. If
Yes.
I've got
Well, it goes into the whole term of why they're called white and Black in the first place.
yeah,
White, if you look up the definition of it, goes to words like purity, cleanliness, innocence. Because if you go back into the earlier, like Greek days and Roman days, they would give you a white stone for innocent, a black stone for guilty. And so all of these terms go back to Black is evil, Black is dark. So they put the term Black on us all the way back to the ancient Egyptian days to denote us as evil, and white put on them. When if you look at it, really, we're all various shades of brown. It's very, well, I guess there are some Africans who are black, but for the most part, we're all various shades of brown. Most white people are various shades kind of a pinkish color, pinkish in hue. And so if you actually scientifically look at it, it's basically an absence of melanin. And so then that gets into curse of Ham. That's some other stuff. We'll talk about that next time, because I definitely want to know how they look at curse of Ham, because I know that many Africans are very spiritual, and there's many Christians down there too. So I know that the curse of Ham stuff has to come up too.
You know, talking about this whole black and white, how they created it, even in with Christianity. If you ask a random person, Jesus Christ, how does he look like? Or even if you ask a kid, the image they have, it's of a white man.
Yeah.
And if I tell anyone that I as an African, I am a traditional healer. I'm just using traditional healer because it's the common phrase, but otherwise there's no traditional healer. It's an insult, it's a healer. If I tell you that I'm a healer and then I get treated like I'm evil, I'm into darkness, right? So now I've added darkness into the equation. Darkness is like almost closer to blackness. And when things are not going well, there is talk of a cloud of darkness. And then when something goes right in the midst of that cloud of darkness, then we're told there is a silver lining, and that silver is closer to whiteness, right? It's all these things that it's all
by design.
It's all by design. It's not a mistake. We just not people are not really focusing as much as we're supposed to be. But for me, I think the lesson for Black people, my call for Black people all over the world, really is we've got more in common than we imagine, and there is no way that we're going to take on the system without uniting.
Well, the fact that you brought up Christ, and if you just go into the book of Revelations, and I'll paraphrase for time, the first verse in the first book of Revelations, it tells you the testimony of Jesus Christ. So it's telling you this is about Jesus Christ. You skip to the 14th verse, it tells you that his hair is white like wool, and then some people are like, oh, see, it's just white hair. as white as snow. No, it's telling you he has woolly hair, and his hair is as white as snow. And then it tells you that he is depending on your Bible, it might say color of brass or bronze, but in actuality, if you go to that time period, it would have been copper. What color is copper? Copper is brown. And then it says, as if it was burnt in a furnace. So it's telling you that he would have made both of us look light in comparison to what he actually looked like. And then you go to the Father, and it says that he had the hair of pure wool. I mean, so what it's telling, and just think of another thing scientifically. People who have melanin in their skin is naturally more receptive to dealing with the sun. If you were going back in ancient days, that would have been a plus to be able to deal with the sun, not a disadvantage. So not having melanin, it would actually be looked at as more of a curse, and was looked at as more of a curse, as it talks about albinism in the Bible too. And remember when it talks about Job and putting his hand into his bosom and it came out white as snow. It talks about Miriam, where she said certain things, and her punishment basically was she was made white as snow. It often says that the paler skin tone is the curse, not the other way around. But we live in a world where everything is flipped upside down.
And then we've got black people that are now investing so much in purchasing sunscreens. I've never used that thing, man, because
I've never used it either. Never had a sunburn in a day in my life.
As a black person, like you said, you're designed to withstand nature. Like it goes back to what we said earlier, that blackness is the real apex of humanity, because in our design, it's natural. That's why we're able to, our skin, our melanin can withstand any damage that may come from the sun, right? It's by design. We blend with nature. We are natural, as it were.
Well, and then on top of that, a white person two white people cannot make a dark child. That doesn't happen. But you can have two black people who can make various different shades, including a white child. So what's more logical? That black people were the original people, and the variations came from black people in different mixtures and different geneticking, or that they were white and somehow there was a curse put on them, and then it turned most of the world melanated.
Yeah, man.
I mean, because we got to remember the white population worldwide comes up to easily roughly about 20% of the world would be white.
Yeah,
so-called white.
So-called, yeah. I really wish I could continue continue for another 24 hours, but before.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we could. But anything
I want to ask you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask you something. There is it's a what is it called? There's a zoo. It's a zoo that's in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Bronx.
Oh, the Bronx Zoo.
Do you know about it? Or you should know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that in 1906? I'm just going to read this here. In 1906, at the New York Zoo, the people that were running that zoo, obviously it's white people, they went to the Congo. They got a black boy there. His name was called Otter Benga.
Mm-hmm.
And they displayed him in the zoo. They put him in the same cage with a monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was in 1906, and crowds flocked in to see the African youth in an iron cage being displayed there, and the bulk of the people that were doing the viewing there were white people. But
of course.
there's so much about it. But I think when we do our next session, because I want us to talk about.
In fact, remind me, and I'll pull that up. And here's something interesting: if you ever shave down a primate, majority, like monkeys, a lot of them actually have pale skin.
Yeah, I do not understand why they try to liken us to monkeys. Like in essence, they likening us to themselves, and they throw bananas at
Well,
us.
it's because a lot of their leaders and people, they had a fear of us, of being dominant, and because they have that fear, you have to demonize. And so you demonize these people and subjugate them as much as possible, divide, 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 so you can take over and be in power over these people. And then you, like the Willie Lynch thing, you mentally subjugate them. So that way you don't need the chains anymore on them. After you have them mentally subjugated, then you replace the standard of what beauty is. You tell them, no, 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 no. This is what beautiful is. And if you're not that, you're ugly. And so once you've broken their minds, then you control them. And that's what they've really done with a lot of their propaganda throughout television, media, music, all of these things. And they've done
Yeah,
that to the whole world.
and they're doing it with this whole conservation thing that they do with the national parks. Now the US has got Obama as its main influencer. But if for me, like I think we will go deeper into this on our next session. But just to highlight, with this whole conservation thing, it's not about nature. It's about conserving white supremacy. If you want to understand what these people plan to do with humankind, look at what they're doing with conservation. They've said it in their own words. I don't even want to get started on it, but even if you look at this whole COVID-19 thing, and this whole thing, they talk about herd immunity and vaccinating people and reaching a certain threshold, and the censorship that they do in the media in terms of pushing a certain narrative. Study the conservation and look at the organizations that are in the forefront. They go everywhere they go. You guaranteed they disrupt the normal life of indigenous people. They even shoot and kill, so they can put animals there. And for them, the world or us is like it's a zoo. So they treat us exactly the same way that they do animals. So they have to vaccinate us.
Yep.
And all these vaccines, all these vaccines, it's not like it's for our benefit. It's for culling. It's the end goal is to kind of like
Yep.
reduce the population to levels that are
Bill
acceptable.
Gates.
Yes, Bill Gates.
I forgot we didn't get to that. And I'm sorry, Jimmy, if you're listening. I'll make sure to DM it. But the next subject next week, make sure you guys pay attention. Not next week, the week after.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about we got to talk about Bill Gates, because we left him out. We got to go back to Bill Gates. I don't even know how I completely forgot about Elon Musk. We got to talk about Elon Musk also. Those two subjects we have to get into, and we're going to get more into the people's zoos and stuff in the Bronx Zoo. The next section will be 2 weeks from now. If that works from you, and it works for me.
That works for me. We have to do some network mapping, and it's important. Then we're gonna have Bill Gates there, and then so that everyone can then see how some of these things connect and try to make sense out of it. And Elon Musk, obviously, and and then all these billionaires in the World Economic Forum. We definitely.
Well, we're gonna go into these same roughly the same time will work for you.
Yeah,
it'll work for me. And so everybody, pencil that in on your calendars right now. 2 weeks from today, we're going to be back same time, and we're going to be talking about those issues. And any questions you guys have, please feel free to DM them to myself or the doctor over there. Either one, and we're going to try to work in. We had a lot of topics that I feel like we touched a lot of things. We didn't get to everything we wanted to, but that's why we're going to be able to keep this relationship open. And don't only count on it being today and 2 weeks from now. I want to keep this line of communication open and keep it going. And to all of our guests out there in Africa and South Africa, I'm thankful for you guys coming through and visiting my channel and being involved in this conversation. And I want to hear your takes and inputs also. I want to hear your viewpoint. I traveled a lot of places, but Africa, I got to touch maybe my toes in the north part of Africa and not got to go deep into the heart of Africa and really get to know. I mean, I have tangential knowledge of some things, but I want to hear. That's part of why I reached out to Gugulethu, because he reached out to me first, but part of why I was like, hell yeah, let's do this, because I like to talk to people in country so they can give me, what's really going on, because I don't trust the media. The media is meant to deceive us and twist our minds, just like our educational books in America, which are mostly Rockefeller funded. But I'm sorry, I babbled a little bit, but yeah, I look forward to that. Please make sure you guys are at this next one.
And I'm sure you've seen also with mainstream media, the experts on Africa is all Europeans. And you must ask yourself,
I don't want that. I want to see, like my mom says this all the time whenever she travels a new place. She's like, where the colored people at? Take me to the part of town where the colored people are. And I know colored people is different in South Africa, but they used to call black people here in America colored also.
Just don't take it to Trevor Noah, please.
No. We don't. Hey, this is a no, boule class. No, we don't need none of those sellouts up in here. No, they're not welcome here.
I think also on our next conversation, we're definitely going to make this an ongoing series.
Mm-hmm.
There was lots of talk on the internet, so don't
pick
your brains.
If you guys have other people that you guys would like to have get into this discussion, and say, hey, you guys want to put a couple of other people, or there's people where you feel like from the American audience, you guys feel like that there's people that you feel like Gugulethu needs to talk to, and set up something. Make sure to feel free to reach out. He's very down to earth, receptive, easy to talk to, and he will respond to your messages. And I'm the same way on the African side. If anybody you guys say, well, I think you should try to talk to this person. If they're willing to talk to me, I'm willing to talk to them. So make sure reach out to us, talk to us.
Yeah, definitely, man.
I will put this note out there. We will definitely put out reminders, right?
Please post reminder link on Twitter. Okay, I'm definitely gonna put a reminder, and I'm gonna share obviously your handle for those that are not following you on Twitter yet. I'm gonna share your handle with everyone there. And then we'll keep the conversation going. I think then we can start getting contributions now, leading to the next session that we're gonna have. So that
next time you any kind of handle or whatever you want to put in there, let me know. I can put that in the description. And if I don't follow you back right away, message me directly and tell me that you were watching, you were part of the discussion, or you watched it later on. Because sometimes I get a little sketchy if I see somebody who they've had a Twitter account since 2012 and they've only tweeted like 4 times. I'm like, I don't know about that. That seems sketchy to me. So
it does. It's same with me. Like I instantly block. Like you joined Twitter in May 2022, and I'm the first person that you're following.
It normally those are bot accounts, and when you start kind of getting a little bit of attention, you do have people who don't always have the best intentions. So, reach out to us directly, have conversation with us, and I can know, okay, this is somebody I talk to. Cool. And then I'll add you right on. But my DMs are wide open for anybody to.
But also, next week you said you're having Carl Zah.
I'll have Carl Zah on.
So just for everyone, Carl is a very great guy, very informed guy, and I'd love for everyone to join next week's session. I'm gonna join also on the show. Contributing and asking questions. Is very, very, very informed when it comes to the geopolitics, be it in Europe or China. Is very, very informed. He's lived in USA for like 30 years. He lives in Bali now.
Believe it or not, he lived in Kansas City too for a while.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, I think for me, the conversation that you had with Carl and you know, it really
Well,
caught my
that's
attention.
what generated this conversation,
Yes,
which
that's what
I think
generated
was
this.
another amazing conversation.
Yeah, it was a very, so I think it will be in the interest of everyone who's going to be having time. Obviously, we'll let you know of the set time for that conversation during the course of the week. Then, if anyone can join, then please feel free to join. I'm going to join in also. And yeah, I think
Yes.
it's going to be a great show.
It's so what I figure is, since this time worked good for you, I'm going to start making it that whenever I have a conversation with you, just keep it at the same time. And then
Yeah.
the same thing with Carl, because Carl is in Bali, and he is a day ahead of me. I normally have that one, I guess, a little later in the evening, and then that works out for him earlier in the morning. So, and as I get more, because I want to talk to more and more people internationally. So, you know, I've done a lot of studying and been a bunch of different places. So definitely want to, get everybody's feedback. Hamza says, Marcus, you in Cali or Kansas right now? I am in Cali. I am in LA County. So those of you guys who have LA questions also, because I know, like you said, that some of you guys have, all of these thoughts about what California or the US is like. And if you want to hear what like LA, like a major city like this is, definitely ask me, DM me your questions also. I talk to about everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a super large account or a small account. I'm just an average, humble guy. So appreciate
Yeah, you'll be amazed at the number of Africans here that can rap or sing word to word Tupac's living down in LA.
Yeah, I mean, and I like to have conversations on about anything and everything. So if you guys want to talk about it, it doesn't even have to be political stuff. If you're into the music industry, if you're art industry, trust me, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah, I would love to talk to Rizzo one day. I feel like for that to happen, you guys probably need to push on Rizzo's bumper, because Rizzo is such a bigger big and important guy and always has so many things going on. And so I don't know if he would necessarily, be able to get to somebody, like me quite yet. But, one day, hopefully I do. Or maybe I can sneak on Pasta's, interview when he gets him on his show. For those who don't know, I got plenty of friends who are a little bit bigger than I am. So, though I'm not that big, I hang out with some bigger people.
Not from the World Economic Forum, right?
No, not that kind of big. Not that kind of
No,
big.
no, those ones are not big. They're evil. So not that kind
Well,
of evil.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, but thank you so much for the session. We're gonna have a great one next time. We're gonna touch on lots of things really that we didn't touch on, I think. But for our first session today, really, we managed to kind of like touch on a couple of things. Like we said, next week, like we've got talk about Bill Gates, Elon Musk. There's many more other things to talk about, and I want us to talk about Kevin Summers also. See
Yeah.
if we can
Yo, definitely talk about Kevin
Yeah.
Samuels. I'm gonna make a list as soon as I get off of here, and then start putting together what we're gonna talk about. Yipper, I would definitely, if you know anybody who has a way of putting me in touch with Richard Medhurst, I would love to talk to Richard Medhurst, because I do focus, believe it or not, I focus probably more on so-called Middle Eastern issues than probably anything. The Middle East, the Levant. That is because my Hebrew Apologetics page, I focus a lot on the Bible and the Levant and that Levantine area, and where everybody meets the early cradle of civilization. So that's my jam really. So Richard Medhurst would be amazing to talk to. Choke no joke. I would love to talk to him also. I told you, I talk to anybody. Anything you like to plug, Gugulethu?
No, I mean, I think that's all, man. I think for me, for today's session, like I said, we obviously the next one we're gonna dive deeper into some of this stuff that we've mentioned. And I'm sure during the week and the week after, obviously, we're going to have more people coming through to say maybe they want us to touch on something. Like you said, if someone wants to understand more about the music or entertainment element from the USA perspective, from Black America perspective, we can talk about that. Family values, we can talk about that.
We didn't get to talk about that very much either. Family values. Right. Joe Rogan ain't gonna talk to me, but Joe Rogan is not talking to me. But if he did, that'd be a blessing. So
I think Curtis Schoon also, I'll talk to him. I think he must
let him know. Tell him to reach out to me.
Tell him, then we can do something. Maybe the three of us just talk about.
I'm with it. I'm completely with it.
So I think other than that, I think thank you so much for the herbal tea. Like I said, I don't take any coffee, though we're in the coffee shop.
Believe it or not, I got the tea right now. I'm glad the green screen blocks it out so you can't see the label, which I don't want to be advertising for none of these companies. But thank you. I'm glad. I'm honored that you came on and that you wanted to come on to my platform, and so gracious, so humble by having you here. Thank you, Baba Yaga. Thank you for everybody who's come through and spent the time, and everybody who will come back, or watch this later on. I appreciate you all.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody have a great rest of your weekend. If it still is your weekend, if it's starting into your early part of your week, have a wonderful week. Nothing but blessings to you all. Thank you.